And we are live. Welcome to the MLB Deeper Dive. It is Tuesday, September 13th. I am Josh Engleman. I am joined by Adam Scherer, and we are brought to you by BetMGM. 11 games to talk about. We did this already a couple hours ago, but there have been some changes that'll, tweak the slate a little bit. So we're going to dig into all of it right now. Be sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Follow us both on Twitter, too. That would be great. Adam, what's going on? Anything interesting happening to you since we last got off our show?
No, just got a nap in. Accidentally knocked the giant piece of metal off my window and had to dodge that, but everything else was normal.
I also got a nap in. I watched some Liverpool. So Joseph Ramirez can suck it. He led off the chat with the guy who scored the goal for Liverpool to win it. So, yeah, I told you. Never a doubt. Never a doubt. Dominant performance. Snuck one out in the end. I'll take what I can get. Well, I've got everything ready. I don't have any additional pleasantries or anything like that. We did this one already today, and I'm ready to just dive in if you are.
Yeah, let's go.
Here we go. Nats and Orioles, 3.8 run implied total for the Nats, 4.7 for the Orioles. Corey Abbott and Dean Kramer. Neither one of these pitchers getting any ownership. Has anything changed for you since earlier today? Do you see Abbott or Kramer as anything more interesting than we saw this morning?
No, for me, they both graded out as just guys that are going a little bit under-owned in the sense that they're not getting any ownership, but that I also highly doubt that I get to. If I got to one, I would expect that I get to Kramer first. I think he's the better pitcher of the two. I think the Nats lineup is not as good as the Orioles lineup, who, on a side note, they're finally running out the lineup that I've wanted them to use ever since they called up Henderson. No Rougned Odor. So happy about that. But just if I got to one, I think it would be Kramer, but doubt that I'll get too much, if any, of either.
Would you be happier if they did have Elvis Andrus in the lineup, though?
I would gladly, replace any of the 9 players that are better than Elvis Andrus with Andrus because he's just, I don't know, supposedly good, I guess.
Makes sense. All right, let's talk about the things that actually matter in this game. That would be the bats. Number 1 in our top stack tool, 7th in value, 4th in ownership. What do you want to do with your number 1 team, the Baltimore Orioles?
I like getting there. And again, I do like the lineup they're running out there as well. Kyle Stowers certainly has had his struggles so far in the majors, but he does have big time power. He is 2K flat. He is facing a pitcher in Abbott who is much closer to a AAA pitcher than a major league pitcher. So that makes him look good. Obviously, Henderson with multi-position eligibility is still cheap. Pretty much everybody after you get past the Mullins, Rutschman, Santander trio is inexpensive. So I think the ownership does make a lot of sense here. I think that, obviously you'll need to be aware of what you're doing with the rest of the lineup. One thing that maybe makes it a little bit more difficult to get to Baltimore is that Jacob DeGrom is also so popular. So if you are, running a 5-man Baltimore stack out there with DeGrom, maybe it starts to get a little bit high in terms of ownership. But also, I think Baltimore just has a deep enough lineup here that there are ways to get around it. For example, Austin Hayes, $3,100, only getting 5% ownership. Mateo's at 6, Stowers is at 7. There's 5 guys in the lineup below 10%. So while none of them are unowned, I think there's enough ways you can balance out the ownership here where, you're not just playing a really chalky 5-man.
I'm a little lighter on the Orioles, but I see the appeal on the surface. This looks like a really strong lineup. Value works. I don't have much else to add other than when you want to get, and you just sort of detailed it now, when you want to get to the Mullins, the Rutschman, the Santander pieces of this, it starts to become a little bit more difficult if you've got Jacob DeGrom in every lineup you've created. So otherwise, I'm happy to fill out. I would like to get as much Baltimore as possible. I love the park. I love the matchup. I like the lineup. I mean, this is a fun team. You're in a good spot now for the next couple of years.
This offseason should be fun too, because it's gonna be the first time in a while that we've actually been looking to spend money and get better.
What's the biggest hole?
Pitching, I would think.
Is that something that can be filled for Baltimore, do you think? You know what I mean? Do they have the ability
so
to
partly
cut
it will
that
be
kind of
because
check?
they have Grayson Rodriguez, who will either be up this year or probably make the team next year. DL Hall will probably make the team out of camp next year. They improved guys like Austin Voth to where he's a major league pitcher at least. But yeah, and then they have so much minor league position player depth that either this offseason or next, I would think they trade some of it for pitching if they can't sign a free agent.
I'm looking through. Is this real? Is DeGrom a free agent?
Yeah.
Huh.
Verlander's going to be a free agent. Well, probably. He suggested he's going to opt out.
I don't get the sense he's going to Baltimore, but
I mean, the only reason I mentioned him is he has ties to Elias. But
okay, that's fair. I'd be surprised to see DeGrom do it, but it would be interesting. That's for sure. I'm just scrolling through this list. Just a lot of Chris Bassett.
That's somebody that I would, like somebody like that would make sense. Where like he's going to be good and get money, but also not command like DeGrom money, and also not in Verlander's case be trying to win like literally next year.
Let's see. Any other names? Wainwright. That's not really what you're looking for. Severino. That could be like an interesting buy low opportunity.
Like rebuild.
Yeah. Fun. Syndergaard, number 23 on the list. There you go.
Oh man, that would be disappointing.
It would be funny to watch you like
suddenly become a huge Syndergaard fan.
Or if you just held strong and just didn't care.
It would probably go the way that it did with Russell Westbrook, where I really did not want him, and then I was really disappointed by the time he left.
God, he's so bad. Let's talk Nats.
Mark Curry said he thought he heard Voth has the top spin rate on his curve. Now, I have no idea. I do know he has a high spin rate. I don't know if it's the top.
Yeah, I don't, that's not something I look at. Fun to hear.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard it mentioned on broadcasts. I just don't know if it's number one or just very good.
Mark, if you would have been around 3 or 4 years ago, Adam and I probably would have dug into that pretty deeply on an early show, breaking down pitchers for no reason. But
yeah, I can tell you that Voth has definitely improved on a lot of things since coming to the Orioles. I think his spin rate is one of them. I don't know if he's at the top now.
There was a time where that actually would have mattered to us. We would have been like tweaking projections for the day for it from a pitcher.
Which I still Voth's one of the few pitchers that I do still manually bump him a little bit. But
there you go. Nats bats, third in value, 14% chance of being the top value stack today. They are pulling 6% ownership. A lot of that is going to Lane Thomas in the leadoff spot. I don't really have much to say here. They seem like perfectly fine filler if you get the right guys. Maybe just sort of skip the bottom 3 guys in the order, but I can't prioritize the Washington Nationals on this slate.
Yeah, I can't either. Kramer's not great, but he's not a total gas can either. 4.1 xFIP this year. 19% strikeout percentage, about 0.7 home runs per 9. Still not able to get data on all of 2022 for his splits, but last 90 days, 129 expected ISO to lefties, 182 to righties. The biggest thing working for the Nats is simply just that they're cheap. Lane Thomas leading off, has some speed and power. Manassas is not cheap, but does have power. Voit, Cruz both have power and are cheap. So there's that, but it's not really a team that I want to get to.
All righty. Oh, I just made one slight tweak. I'm up to 7% of the Orioles, so I'm a little bit happier with where that's coming in. So that'll work for me right now. Still have 100% of Jake DeGrom, though, because that's how this works. Larry C. said, watch DeGrom will go to Atlanta. I wish.
I mean, that would be fun.
Could you imagine? Like, you don't want to run into him and Strider in a short series, that's for sure.
Oh my God. Yeah, I didn't even think about Strider and Fried. So Fried would be their number 3 in a short series. Like that would be insane.
Sign me up.
I mean, they should have plenty of money to spend since they've ripped off every young player that they extended.
Yeah, if you're an international hitter playing for Atlanta, they are robbing you blind. Which I'm thrilled about. All right, Blue Jays and Rays. I've got this at 4.6 run implied total for the Blue Jays, 3.9 for the Rays. Last I looked, there was not a line for this. I'm going to check one last time to see if it's up yet. But I did not see it when I prepped earlier in the 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock window. Ooh, there is a line. Okay. Let me actually just update this. It'll be a little bit easier. This will take me 2 seconds. Jordan, if you hear me, you can update these things. It's plus 140 for the Rays, minus 165 for Toronto, and the total is 8. So it's a 3.6 run implied total for the Rays, 4.4 for the Jays. I was pretty much on it. Alek Manoah now is starting, at least that's the plan.
Yes,
game number
confirmed.
He is starting game number 2 so long as he doesn't like shit his pants up until 7 o'clock or whatever. They want him to be starting, but he has a stomach bug.
Yeah,
That,
so
that
but they did get. I knew they wanted that, but they did actually report that he is starting.
okay. It is like
Because like
official
the
official
Orioles did
now.
the exact same thing in their doubleheader with Toronto the other day, where it was like Lyles is starting game one, and then he just didn't pitch game one because he was sick, and then game two they were like, oh, we want Lyles to pitch game two, and then he couldn't pitch game two either.
And then on the
But
opposite side of this one, we've got Yanni Chirinos now. I guess is that a long term thing? I don't even I haven't heard that dude's name in a while.
yeah, I mean, I'd seen him listed as the probable guy earlier, but then I think it's still supposed to be like Fleming after him, maybe.
Okay,
He hasn't thrown more than 3 innings this year,
okay.
including the minors.
Then it
So it's
bullpen
probably
game.
Fleming after him.
Yeah. Okay, that works.
Double check, make sure he didn't pitch game one.
Let's see.
I know Mitch White pitched game one too for Toronto,
Yeah.
so that was a good sign for Manoah's health.
Uh, Fangraphs has just Yanni Chirinos, and they normally list the long guy, but like he's
I
not
didn't
going
do
long.
they? I
So
didn't think they did.
yeah, they usually do. But I mean, Yanni Chirinos is not going long here, so doesn't really matter. Let's talk Manoah since we didn't talk about him earlier. 9,300 today. So he gets out of that 10K price range that we saw, but tough matchup against the Rays. May have the poops. Who knows? Projected for 5% ownership. I got 10. I like getting to Manoah. I think he's good, but this is not like a great spot or anything.
No, I do think that he's kind of useful on this slate though. Like we talked so much earlier about the mid-range pitching being nice because it lets you save some money off of DeGrom, but then also not being that good because basically outside of Joe Ryan and Jordan Montgomery, everybody in that range just had a really difficult matchup. So now you have, Manoah, who is a good pitcher. He's 9,300. I think he's somebody you can still land on here and there. Certainly would prefer to get to the Cole, DeGrom range, but you do get a little bit of a discount there, which is nice.
Just want to point out, Jake Swale says Chirino should pitch 5 innings if he's going good. There's no evidence to that. His most 4 recent appearances in AAA were 3 innings, 3 innings, 3 innings, 3 innings. And on September 7th, he threw 3 innings for the Rays. There's nothing that I see there that says to me Yanni Chirinos is going 5 today.
Their bullpen also didn't need to be used much in the first game. Jeffrey Springs went 6 innings. Sean Armstrong went 1 2/3. Fairbanks went 1 1/3. So they are good to go behind Chirinos as well.
Yeah. Like, well, could he go 5? Yeah, probably. But there's no real way to project that other than like you got to be way lower than that mark and you're not playing Yanni Chirinos. Anyway, let's talk about bats. Toronto, 10th in our top stack tool, 11th in ownership. As per usual, if they are 3% owned, I will have more of the Toronto Blue Jays, and that is where it seems to stand. So I have 9% Jays, 11% of my 5-man stacks. And like usual, I would like to get to Toronto if they are not picking up ownership.
Yeah, I'm there with you. I mean, I don't like that you're getting Chirinos followed by a pretty fresh bullpen. So I don't love the spot for Toronto, but I do just like the amount of talent that they have.
I'm a little surprised to see them with this minimal amount of ownership, just given what's out there. But I get this is just another sign that we have 4 10K pitchers on the slate. But if that means that I can get, 2% owned Bo Bichette and 2% owned Alejandro Kirk, that's what I'm trying to do. So sign me up for Toronto. Didn't work yesterday. Let's see if it works today. What about on the Tampa side here? 10th in top stack, basically the same as the Blue Jays. 9th in ownership, basically the same as the Blue Jays. Do you want to go to the Rays?
Not really. I feel like that line's weird for Manoah pitching.
Yeah, how so?
The Jays are not favored at home.
The Jays are favored at home.
Oh, I was seeing it as even. I guess it hadn't updated.
No, it's like minus 160 plus 140.
Okay. Then yeah, much better.
Yeah, it's exactly what you think it should be.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, minus 155 on Pinnacle.
Yeah. Okay. Do you like the Rays at all?
No.
Okay. Anything else in this game?
Nope.
All right.
I'm trying to find more on Chirinos because somebody in chat had said that it was from Mark Topkin, which I don't see anything on Twitter. And I know in the past he has been bad about putting his own thoughts onto things that are going to happen. So I wanted to
I mean,
see
he threw
exactly how-
53 pitches on the 7th and was throwing 3 innings a game in the minors for the past month. And let's say you were just like, yo,
he can throw 70 something pitches.
Yeah, I completely agree. But like, anybody can throw 5 innings depending on how efficient those pitches are becoming. But like, there's no problem. I mean, there's no way that we're projecting him for anything close to that.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to see what the actual quote was because I'm not positive, but I'm pretty sure in the past, Topkin specifically has done stuff where it's just like, so-and-so could do XYZ, but he's not reporting. He's just giving his personal thoughts.
All right. Well, schedule for the rest of the day is easy. MLB Live before lock coming up next. And that is all we've got. That's it. Easy day today since there's no NFL football tonight. MLB Top Stacks tool is free along with our PGA rankings. So if you're playing the MLB slate, and I assume if you're watching us right now, you are, go check out the Top Stacks tool. We'll talk about it the entire show. Now we'll go Mets and Cubs. 4.6 run implied total for the Mets. I've got 2.2 for the Cubs. Jake DeGrom, Adrian Sampson. DeGrom, 68% owned at 11.8 today. And I agree with every bit of it. My projection is higher now than it was earlier today. If that's interesting to you, Adam, what do you want to do with Jake DeGrom other than play him everywhere, always?
I want to play him as much as I can. The line I'm looking at least is now down to 1.9, or the implied run total, I should say, for the Cubs. There's just like he's just so different. Like even making my tournament plays videos earlier, it was difficult because it was like, do I make Jacob DeGrom the number 1 tournament option even though he's getting 70% ownership, or do I not mention him even though he's clearly the number 1 tournament option? Like I don't really know what to do. So I used him number 1 on DraftKings and then just made him like an honorable mention on FanDuel, because at least on FanDuel where you're rostering the one pitcher, you do get like a pretty big gap in ownership from DeGrom to Cole. You're talking like 4-1, but then at the same time, you're talking about 40 or 50% of the field just not playing DeGrom, which is really appealing if you're going to roster him. But just clearly breaks everything. Insanely good pitcher. 41 and change percent strikeout percentage this year through 7 starts. 39% 2 years ago, 45% last year. Just insanely good.
What do we have him at now?
Ownership or projection?
Projection.
26.1.
I'm up to 32.6. 9.8 strikeouts. 25% K rate in the Cubs lineup. They did get rid of whoever the hell I mentioned had a really low strikeout rate. Yeah. I believe his prize pick strikeout prop is 9.5. So like I feel really good about my projection.
Yeah, we're at 20. I just updated again. We're at 26.3.
Okay. I'll send you my stuff so you can definitely get 100%.
Yeah, I don't think
instead of 97%.
Right, yeah. Need him in that extra 1 lineup.
Yeah, he's at 90 or 9.5 strikeouts on prize picks. I got him at 9.8. So I feel pretty good about that. 55 fantasy points on FanDuel. Man, it's incredible. Yeah, I got him in every single lineup that I've created so far. So go Jake DeGrom. And if you happen to run across anybody that doesn't play DeGrom in cash today, this is like the extra special, write that shit down in Sharpie one.
Yeah, I don't know how you possibly make a cash lineup without DeGrom.
Poorly. You can make it poorly, that's for sure.
Yeah,
Adrian Sampson?
If that one guy was still playing that I assume just went broke, he would probably be playing, I don't know, Chirinos and Kramer. And no, I'm not interested in Sampson. Just not a good strikeout pitcher anyway. Middle of the road in terms of run prevention, but the Mets certainly not a lineup where I'm looking to get to him.
Alrighty. How do you feel about the Mets bats? We're clearly not talking about the Cubs today. 10th in top stack for the Mets, 11th in ownership. I'm not all that interested. I hate really targeting the Mets in this park. I would have been fine getting them because I don't care about Sampson, but it's not a spot for me.
Yeah, and also they're pretty expensive.
Yeah.
There's nobody in the lineup below 4K on DraftKings until you get down to Escobar hitting 7th at 3,900. So, like, obviously you're not going to be upset about getting to guys like Nimmo, Lindor, McNeil, Alonso, Vogelbach, but you're paying for them. And, you know, with this being a slate where there's not really pitching I want to pay down for all that much, you know, like I'll do it here and there if I have to, but ideally I'm paying up. It's going to be a kind of difficult team to get to. So they are projected to go a little bit under-owned, but from the value component, I think that it's likely I just kind of end up not being able to get there too much.
Alrighty. Next one up, because we're not talking Cubs, Red Sox and Yankees. 3.8 run implied total for the Red Sox, 4.7 for the Yankees. Nick Pivetta and Garrett Cole. Pivetta basically unowned at 7,600. Better matchup than normal against the Yankees, but still not a good one. Cole, 10,900, so $900 cheaper than Jake DeGrom. 21% owned. It's a tough spot against Boston. Not a lot of strikeouts in this lineup. I like soar over the field on Garrett Cole no matter what's happening. That's not today. I got 25%. So I'm going to be basically right there with the field. Looks good, not great.
Yeah, that's how I see it as well. Clearly one of the best pitchers on the slate, but the gap between Jacob deGrom and Cole is just bigger than between Cole and others. And part of that is the matchup. The Red Sox are a difficult team to strike out. They do have a deeper lineup now than they have for portions of the year where they were banged up. You have Tristan Casas up as well, who is their top hitting prospect. He's hitting seventh. Arroyo's been better than previous years this year offensively as well. So it's a tough lineup, and you are getting, obviously Cole's less expensive than DeGrom, but you are also getting him at a pretty close to correct price tag as opposed to the slates where, he was 10% cheaper.
What do you do if you want a DeGrom Cole lineup? Where are you going today?
Nats was my first thought.
Okay. Anything for you
Probably
on Pivetta?
Oakland.
Yeah.
Yeah, Oakland, you can do it easily. Bottom of the order, KC.
I mean, Yankees if you leave out Judge, honestly.
Yeah.
Which, I know what that sounds like.
Yeah. Minnesota is probably the one that that's probably going to be the most popular one to get to. Like almost a 5 implied run total, and you can pretty easily get to both guys. Like if you go to DeGrom Cole, you're getting $3,400 per position. That's not a lot, but it's certainly doable when you have so many teams that are just 3K and below across the board. Like the most expensive hitter outside of Correa on Minnesota is $3,400.
I'm checking out what I get if I just set it to like just lock DeGrom and Cole, no randomness. Like what is my best lineup with DeGrom and Cole?
Yeah, somebody said Baltimore Cole or Baltimore 4 through 8. That also would very easily work.
Mine's White Sox.
Yeah, there's actually a lot of ways you can do it.
Grandal, Abreu, Moncada, Hall of Famer Elvis Andrus, and Gavin Sheets. But I also get like Judge as one of my one-offs. So
right, yeah, and it's just a reminder that like I know I've said it a couple of times that like DeGrom and Cole are at least somewhat close to being correctly priced as opposed to earlier in the year. It only goes so far. You can make the pitcher pricing as much as you want. It only goes so far if you're just going to make entire lineups $2,500.
Yep. All right. How do you feel about bats here? Because we have the Yankees now as the number one stack. That has been refreshed. It was the Orioles when we started this show. It is now the New York Yankees. They are third in ownership and fifth in value. You don't normally see a Yankees team be fifth in value and maintain that top stack odds, but it's here. I'm still getting to New York. I'm actually a little bit over the field here. How do you feel about the Yanks?
Yeah, I don't totally get them being the top stack just because they suck outside of Judge, Stanton. I mean, 1 through 4, they're okay, I guess. Obviously, 1, they're extremely, extremely good. Cabrera might be a good hitter, probably isn't right now. And Duhar has been bad for a while. Kiner Falefa is terrible. Gonzalez has been bad for a while. Trevino has been, I think, solid this year, but certainly not a guy that you think of as being a good hitter over the course of his career. So it's just kind of surprising. And Pavetta's okay. He's not a terrible pitcher either. So it's just kind of surprising to me that they're as high as they are there. The value side of it, I think I have an easier time buying into just because they are cheap outside of Judge and Stanton, essentially. So I like them here. I think it's a good spot. I don't think I'm quite as high on them as we are just because most of this lineup is just bad.
What about the opposite side of this one? Is any merit to getting to the Red Sox against Cole?
I have a really difficult time with that one. They're also not cheap. Like you're paying the bottom of the order is cheap, but should be. You're paying pretty close to just normal prices to take them against Cole on an 11 game slate. Tristan Casas at 2K flat. He's kind of Pasquantino-esque in that he's just too good of a hitting prospect to be minimum salary, but he's still facing Garrett Cole.
Cash options on the Yankee side? Judge, probably?
Yeah, probably Judge, maybe Stanton. Torres, I think, was in my early cash lineup as well. Then, if one of the really cheap guys gets in there, I guess that's okay. But I think those would be the 3 I'd be most likely to get to.
I get to so much of the White Sox, so I guess we'll talk about that. But I am getting to Judge. I'm getting to Torres. I'm getting to Andahar quite a bit.
In the one I built earlier, which it doesn't have all the updated lineups. Everybody in it is playing, but it certainly could change some. But I had Torres and Judge from the Yankees. And then I know somebody had asked in chat earlier. I had Mullins, Mountcastle from Baltimore, and I had Thomas from Washington.
Okay. Twins and Royals, 4.8 run implied total for the Twins, 3.6 for the Royals. Joe Ryan and Chris Bubich. Bubich unowned. So Adam, I guess we'll bring that up a little bit. Joe Ryan, 25% owned at 8,100. Looks like a pretty good spot here against Kansas City. There are some strikeouts to be had. I'm not entirely sure this is a spot that I'm trying to get a lot of. I think I like the Royals a little bit more than I like Joe Ryan on the opposite side. Not that I don't like Joe Ryan in general, but ownership just feels a tad high to me today.
I expect to get to both sides here because, like, I agree that ownership's probably a tad high, but I also just don't know where else I really want to go. Like, obviously, I'm fine going to some Jordan Montgomery, but he's going to get ownership too. It's not like you have a big gap between them, and you just don't really have a lot of pitching talent down in that Joe Ryan price range. Right now, when you look at the pitchers that we just have projected ahead of Joe Ryan in terms of fantasy points, it's DeGrom, Cole, Kershaw, Darvish, Manoah. All of those guys are at least $1,200 more expensive. But then even if you keep going lower, we have Montgomery basically at an identical projection. Kyler Wright's more expensive. Gilbert, Kelly, all more expensive. Then you're down to Kopech and Waldichuk, who are less expensive. So it's just a situation where the value that he offers, in addition to just being one of the higher projected pitchers, I think it's pretty likely that I end up getting there a good amount, even though, I do think Kansas City certainly has more talent than their overall numbers this year. They've not really, consistently come through. They do also have 6 left-handed bats in the lineup, which hasn't been ideal for Ryan this year from a strikeout standpoint, but I still think he looks like one of the better pitching options today.
One of the bigger reasons that I think I'm not going to get to a ton of Joe Ryan, and I'm not even getting to a ton of Montgomery any longer, or just really anybody, since I have DeGrom and everything, I'm basically just taking everybody at this point. Anybody with like a general pulse. Cole, Darvish, Kershaw, Wright, Manoah, Kelly, Gilbert, Montgomery, Ryan. Like all these guys are showing up in like 5% of my lineups or more. I'm all right with that. Like
I was going to say too, I wouldn't, even just based on what we were just saying, I wouldn't be surprised if I end up just playing a lot of DeGrom plus one of Cole, Kershaw, Darvish or something. There's just enough cheap bats that I think you can just spread it out across a bunch of offenses too. Even if you are you can go, I think the way you said it makes sense especially if you're getting, a little bit more concentrated on offenses and then just playing DeGrom plus a lot of other pitchers or DeGrom plus only a couple other pitchers and just spreading it out across all of the cheap offenses.
And the guys that I'm getting are the guys that I think are quality pitchers. Like obviously the 10K guys, the Kyle Wrights, the Alek Manoahs, like those guys just can be in lineups by default, generally speaking. But like Montgomery looks good at 8,400. I do think Joe Ryan looks good. I just think at 25% is what's like stopping me from actually getting to the 15% that I would like to get to. But it's not like I'm going to be getting Josh Fleming or Sampson or Lindblom or Chad Kuhl or something like that. I'm getting the guys that I should be getting to, but it's just a minimal amount of all of them.
Yeah. And I think that makes sense. That's one of the two ways that I could see my stuff playing out, and I wouldn't be surprised at all.
Yeah, just one of those cases where you run out of giving out ownership pretty quickly when you block one off.
Like you put it in the fantasy cruncher afterwards and see your exposures, and it's the DeGrom 100, and then just a list of pitchers that are 20% or below.
Yeah. Unrelated. Do you know that you can just do that now?
What?
You can upload your CSV and not have to run a late swap with extra salary over the cap. You can import your actual file now. You don't have to monkey around with it.
You've been able to do that for years, right?
No. Brand, this is new, that you could import crunches that were generated already in a different mechanism than late swaptimizer.
Okay, because I would put it in late swaptimizer, but then I wouldn't crunch anything. I would just click exposures.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, where you could just see it on the right-hand side. But if you wanted to bring up the list of all of your lineups in card view or whatever,
okay, got
you can just throw your file directly in now into FC.
Oh, okay, cool. Now I get what you're saying. Yeah. I was like, yeah, man, you've been able to do that as long as I can remember.
No, that one's not slipping through what I know. But if you, in the Restore Crunches tab, there's an Import External Crunches button. So you can import all sorts of different weird shit now instead of just the way that it had to be before.
That will be really nice for NBA season.
Yes, very much so. All right, let's talk bats here, because I can't let you talk about Chris Bubich. So Twins are 6th in top stack tool, 2nd in value, second in ownership. I'm a little bit lighter here because when it comes to value bats, it's rarely going to be a spot where I'm like following the field, because I think that you can always just find different value bats. And that's where I'm at right now. Outside of Carlos Correa and to a lesser extent, Garlick and Miranda, I don't really like this lineup all that much. 110 WRC plus is still solid, but not a lot of power, particularly for righties, which is not ideal against the lefty and Bubic. I'm light on the Twins.
Yeah, I think I probably will be too, for the same reasons you said. I think that they are good value. I think that individually, plenty of them look good. I mentioned it before, the only hitter in this lineup above 3,400 on DraftKings is Correa at 4,900. But also, there's just a lot of cheap offenses that you're going to be able to get for less ownership. And there's probably going to be a lot of overlap between people going to Minnesota, people playing DeGrom, people paying up for another pitcher. And it's just going to be really difficult to actually win tournaments that way. Not that it's always difficult to win tournaments, but obviously you're just kind of making your life a little bit harder on yourself just for the sake of getting a little bit better projected lineup when variance essentially is going to make that bump in projection meaningless. The other issue with Minnesota makes them, look a little bit different than a team like Baltimore. The only hitter on Minnesota projected for less than 8% ownership is Celestino at 1%. Arise and Cave both sub 10%, and then everybody else is north of 10. So as Baltimore, half the lineup was between 5 and 10% owned, and you could mix those guys in. Here, the guys that you want to get to: Correa, Gordon, Garlick, Urshela, Sanchez, all like 11 to 17% owned. Not exactly what I'm likely to be pairing with a 70% owned DeGrom.
Yeah. Danny Chen wanted to know, is Urshela okay for cash? It's not who I'm getting when I run my crunch, but a $2,700 third baseman that is picking up ownership is not like off the path of the correct answer.
Yeah,
it's just not who I am getting.
The reason that I would say no is because of Josh Young hit at 2K, but
I'm getting Moncada everywhere.
Okay, yeah, I'll say I think Moncada is reasonable. But Urshela certainly. If I saw somebody playing Urshela, I wouldn't be surprised. I actually don't have any in the lineup that I had put together earlier, which again certainly could change. I didn't have anybody from Minnesota, which is extremely surprising. But
Garlick in 29% for me, and that's it. That's everybody I could see on the left hand side. So
yeah, but it's kind of like it's one of those teams where I think they have a lot of options. I just don't know if any of them actually crack it. Like Correa is certainly an option, but I think paying down for Andrews is probably the route that I'm going to go, and most people are going to go. Garlick certainly an option. Miranda certainly an option. But then, you have Miranda, you also have Pasquantino, or you have Mountcastle. For Urshela, you have Moncada, you have Young. So I don't know that there's Sanchez certainly an option, but he's hitting 8th, and you have Langoliers hitting 4th. So I'm leaning Langoliers there. So it's just a bunch of guys that look good, but I just don't know which, if any, will actually get in.
Well, the good news is I'm getting a little bit less Royals than I was earlier today. The bad news is it's still many multiples above the ownership. 14th in top stack, 13th in ownership at 2.5%. But this is a great value stack once you get out of those first 3 guys. I've got 9% of my 5-man stacks as Kansas City Royals, and I assume you will too.
Yeah, I probably will as well. Pretty much the normal reasons. The guys at the top are actually good, or at least very highly regarded prospects, with Melendez, Witt, Pasquantino, Perez, one of the highest upside catcher options. You have Prado hitting 5th, which is nice at 2,800. The one thing that sucks on DraftKings is Pasquantino and Prado are both only first base eligible, so can't get them together. Nate Eaton hitting 6th, 2K flat as well. Bottom of the order, not great, but just a cheap lineup that does have MPE in the top 2 spots and at useful positions too, where Melendez is a catcher, where Witt's a shortstop. So, I'm interested in them. I don't think that they're going to be like my highest owned stack or anything, but perfectly fine getting there, given that they are getting essentially no ownership.
Anything else in this one?
I'll probably there's a chance I end up getting some Bubic just because he's 5,200, but will not be upset if that doesn't happen.
We got a super chat from Elvis Andrews that says, "I love all of the motivation you guys give me on a daily basis."
You're welcome, I didn't see the name on that originally. I was just like, we're 2 really unusual people to be inspired by. And I saw the name and got the joke.
If you guys are interested in money, you should probably listen to what I'm about to say, because this is going to be about money. In case you didn't notice, sponsor of this video is BetMGM. If you see the banner at the top of the screen, you can just move ahead with that offer and go click the link in the description of the video. But if you sign up using the link in the description of this video and bet $10, you will win $200 from BetMGM. The current read says if any team scores a touchdown, that obviously doesn't make a lick of sense for today. There's no football. My wife might think there's a touchdown in a baseball game, but there's not. But it still applies. This is still an offer for you guys. $10 turns into 200 at BetMGM, basically by default. They just sort of have to hang something out there that is guaranteed to happen. They could do, if the speed of the wind is higher than 1 mile per hour, and you'll still get it here. Just take advantage of these offers. Every time that you see one of these deals where you're going to be getting a significant chunk of change just from basically showing up, just do it. Take advantage. I can't take advantage of any of these offers because my state refuses to get with the times, but when I can, I'm going to hit them all up because you want to have the ability to shop around for lines, have a little bit of different books so that you can make sure you're getting the best spot. You can see the link in the description of this video. Go ahead, right there. Click it, head on over to BetMGM, get that money.
So you won't pick up $20 off the ground, but you do draw the line at picking up $200 on the internet?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Of course. Would you pick it up?
$20?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, I might, depending on where in the city I am, I might just hand it to somebody sitting on the sidewalk next to me. But
come on. Don't give me this nonsense.
Yeah, I'm going to pick up $20 if I walk past it.
With that quote, we're going back to I love all the motivation you guys give me on a daily basis. Adam's just handing it out to the homeless. Game 6, Cardinals Brewers. 4.3 run implied total for the Cardinals, 3.3 for the Brewers. Jordan Montgomery and Josh Lindblom. Montgomery, 8,400, 16% owned. I was getting a ton earlier today. Now that it's sort of walked its way back, but I don't have anything negative to say about Montgomery. It's a great strikeout matchup, solid enough park here, and I think he's good.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Plenty of strikeouts, good pitcher. You've seen him do even better since going to the Cardinals, but even with the Yankees, he was good. One of the mid-range pitchers that I actually do have some confidence in. So again, like we were talking about with Joe Ryan, not sure how my lineups play out in the sense that, do I end up getting a lot of Ryan Montgomery, or do I end up just kind of spreading limited exposure out throughout that entire group because of having 100% DeGrom most likely? But I do think Montgomery is one of the better mid-range guys.
Jordan nailed it. Adam will pick it up and hand it to a stripper like a gentleman. Oh my gosh. I don't know if this guy's trolling or just the least bright person that's ever been here, but I'm guessing it's probably both. Let's talk about the Cardinals bats here. 11th in top stack, but 19th in ownership, just 1%. Is there something here for the Cardinals? Because they are just getting completely slept on, probably because they're expensive.
Yeah, I think it's the pricing and that it's not a super appealing spot where you have Matt Bush opening. You have, I think, Lindblom coming in after him. So it's a bullpen game, which is just typically not that appealing. But the pricing, I think, is the big thing for me. We don't have that lineup yet, but just knowing, having an idea of what it's likely to look like. Goldschmidt, Arenado, O'Neill, all 5,400 plus. Tommy Edman, 5,500. And then mostly guys that I don't really care to play. So I think that's the biggest thing. It's just the guys that would typically drive up your interest in the Cardinals are really difficult to get to.
Yeah, I didn't get to much. Corey Dickerson was about it, and he's not really the guy that I want to be getting to, so I'm not excited about it. I only have 2% 2% stacks of the Cardinals, so that's where I'm here. Brewers, on the other hand, I am not getting to. They are unowned, and as far as I'm concerned, they should be.
Yeah, I'm there with you. They're also not really that cheap. They're a team where I think Jordan Montgomery is good, but if you were giving me the Brewers at really cheap prices and I could just get them at no ownership and pair them with DeGrom and whoever I want, then I would be able to make a better case for them just because they do have power in this lineup, but you're just paying full freight for them in a pretty difficult spot. Mike Brosseau leading off offers some value at third base, but we've already kind of touched on the fact that there's several very good value third basemen that are not facing Jordan Montgomery. So I think they're pretty difficult to get to because of the matchup and the prices.
Rangers and A's, 4.5 run implied total for the Rangers, 4 for the A's. Cole Reagans and Ken Waldachuk going here. Neither guy really pulling any ownership. 6,200 for Waldachuk, 5% owned. That's exactly what I have. It's a great strikeout matchup for both guys. It's a shame that like neither one of them is going to go extra deep into this game or anything like that, because this could have been a good spot, but I don't really want the pitching.
Yeah, I don't really either. Waldachuk at 6,200, I guess, kind of fits into the Chris Bubich thing for me, where if for some reason I have to pay down for pitching, then fine. But I just don't really think, the more we talk about it, I don't think this is a slate where I end up paying down for pitching too much. And it goes back to, I'd seen somebody mention it in chat that they were interested in going, DeGrom, Chirinos, and just stacking whoever you want, which, like, fine. But the thing is, there's so many cheap stacks that it becomes really difficult to win that way, because it's not like NBA where getting to expensive hitters means that you're just getting more points. There's a good chance that you're not. It's a big problem that came up when DraftKings first started loosening their pricing, because 2016, 2017, there was an advantage to finding the, Yanni Chirinos type really cheap SP2s that you could use. You could then get to teams like the Yankees or Dodgers, whatever. The difference though now is that even good teams have cheap players for the most part. Like, you can find ways to stack pretty much any team you want with most pitchers. Like, you don't have to go all the way down to, a really cheap pitcher and then just plug in a bunch of $5,500 guys. Chances are there's just going to be enough 3K guys that hit home runs where what you just did was completely useless because you're sacrificing so many points at pitcher. So that's kind of the issue I have with Waldachuk and Reagans as well. Reagans, through 5 starts in the majors, also just has not looked like he belongs at all, only striking out around 13% of hitters, coming off of a 27% strikeout percentage at AAA. Waldachuk only a couple of starts in the majors. Zips projects him for about a 23.5% strikeout percentage, 4.2 xFIP, if I remember correctly, somewhere in there. But neither guy seems all that useful on this particular slate.
So I'm getting some bats here. I'm neutral to the field on the A's at 7%. They are 5th in ownership, 8th in top stack. They are our number 1 value play. But the Rangers aren't too far behind in some of this. They are 7th in top stack, slightly ahead of the A's. 4th in top value, still at 10%, so it looks good. They're 6% owned. I got a bunch of the Rangers. Do you see yourself getting to this game? Because this is a spot where I feel like I can get a little bit less ownership at a decent value mark.
Yeah, I do think they look like one of the teams that gives you that. If you look at the top stacks tool, we have them right below Minnesota. Minnesota having a 7% chance of being the top stack, Texas around 6%. But getting half the ownership. So I think that is one spot that makes sense. Waldachuk is a highly regarded pitching prospect. He was the key piece of the Frankie Montas trade, but still making, I believe, his 3rd major league appearance. There's certainly no guarantee that he's just ready to go and going to be great out of the gate. You have plenty of power in the Rangers lineup. Mark Mathias is hitting 2nd with multi-position eligibility at 2,600. The one thing that makes that multi-position eligibility a little bit less useful is that it's the 2 positions that the number 1 and number 3 hitters play. So it only gets you so far. But you also get a good value bat in Josh Young, who 8th overall pick in 2019. He is a top prospect. Looks good. 253 ISO at AAA this year. I'm pretty sure that's PCL, so kind of who cares. But Steamer projects him for a 193 ISO rest of season. Zips is at 188. He's somebody that just has absolutely no business being $2,000.
Completely agree. Got a bunch of them too. Happy about it. Talk about the A's side.
I've pitched that like 100 times and keep being told no.
Really?
The show should be 1 minute long with host reading the 9 best plays in a serious tone and then signing off.
Shouts to friend of the program, Peter Viles.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's been the dream.
Yeah, that's the kind of content I'm trying to do.
Get there as well. Like, what'd you say?
That's the kind of content I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
If I can get paid,
it is not us that are choosing not to do that content. Yeah. From the A's side, I think it's a good matchup. Reagans, like I said, he really hasn't put it together at the major leagues through his first 5 starts. You do have some cheap power upside here. The A's still aren't good, but they are getting out of Oakland, so that's nice. Laureano leading off at 3,700 seems nice. Murphy and Langoliers can only play 1 on DraftKings, but they both have power. Pinder at 2K has power, hitting 3rd. Garcia's got power. So it's, as far as A's lineups go, it's actually a pretty decent one.
Yeah, I have no real issue getting there. I mean, the bottom 2 spots of the order are pretty rough, but otherwise, This is the spot that I'm going where like not as many people seem to be going, and that'll work for me today.
Yeah. Andrew Martinez said, "How would you feel about leaving the first two batters off the Rangers lineup and going from there?" You
I don't
sure?
want.
I mean, I don't.
Yeah, I
It's
don't need
not like
to.
my intention because I would like to get one of them, but
Yeah,
I'm assuming it was like for ownership reasons because Semion's getting 10%, Matthias is getting 8. But even like if that's what you were getting at, then I'm not overly concerned about it just because, Nate Lowe, lefty is getting 2% ownership. Tavares is getting 2%. Adolis Garcia is at 4%. Like, I don't need to skip 10% on Marcus Semien, who's one of the better hitting options here, just because he's getting 10% ownership. One thing that does suck for Texas is that they are missing Seager, but yeah. So I mean that's a perfectly fine approach. Like if I got a lineup like that, I wouldn't be surprised, but I'm not going out of my way just not to play those two.
this will be the final time that I get to do this read. Scramble is the promo code. SCRAMBLE. NFL Plus package. So everything we've got for the NFL for just $7. That's 70% off the original price, and you get it for 7 days. This includes everything, literally everything that we have on the NFL side. We're talking new lineup builder, projections, ownership, top stacks, boom bust, and even more behind the paywall here. It does not include Fantasy Cruncher. That is an independent product from us. But everything that we've got at Stokastic, that is what you get using the promo code SCRAMBLE if you want to get some NFL Plus coverage. Because if you don't use this code today, you will never be able to use it. It will be gone. All righty. White Sox and Rockies. 4.8 run implied total for the White Sox, 3.6 for the Rockies. Michael Kopech and Chad Kuhl. Kopech, 11% owned at 7,100. Not really all that interesting to me, but the Rockies do stink, so I get it.
Yeah, completely agree. Kopech hasn't been good this year either, which has been weird and disappointing. But this is sort of like when teams face the A's with mediocre pitchers. One side's probably going to win out, and it's going to be a side that's not very good because neither option is very good. But the price tag on Kopech is somewhat appealing. He's getting ownership for that reason. I mentioned it earlier when we were talking about Wright and Montgomery and why I think it makes sense that they're getting ownership. When you go down in terms of projection after those guys, you start talking about pitchers that are more expensive than them until you get to Waldichuk and Kopech. So I get why he's getting it. The Rockies just are not good outside of Coors Field. But I do have interest in the Rocky side as well, just because Kopech hasn't been good this year. He's allowed 1.1 home runs per 9. He's walking 12% of hitters, 21% strikeout percentage, 4.9 xFIP. McMahon at 4,400 with MPE looks nice. Crone, Blackman, Rogers, Grichuk, Tolia, all those guys have power. So I do actually have some interest in the Rockies here, which is really unusual outside of Coors Field.
I got a little bit of the Rockies as well, 8%, in fact, just another spot where I'd find it to be like totally fine. And then I'm getting to the White Sox. They are our number one ownership team right now, but I'm still just holding hands with the field because I think they're a good combination of top stack and top value, 6th on both. So ultimately, I'm getting a lot of hitting in this game.
Yeah, I'm right there with you.
All right. And then, like I mentioned before, when I was running my crunches, the White Sox were the guys that were showing up most to me as like my top sort of projected value guys, the cash consideration type plays. So be interested there as well. Anything else in White Sox Rockies?
No, I mean, just I guess the White Sox side, like there is a lot of value there. We mentioned Elvis Andrus in cash, even though I don't know why he's leading off and he sucks.
Yo, man, he gave us a super chat today.
They're kind of like
down.
Minnesota to me.
The man sent us a super chat, and you're just going to disparage him on our show?
I don't even know what you're talking about.
Elvis Andrews sent us a super chat, man. It happened like an hour ago.
Yeah.
All right. Diamondbacks and Dodgers. 3.2 run implied total for the D-backs. 4.5 for the Dodgers. We got Merrill Kelly and Clayton Kershaw. Kelly unowned at 9K. Kershaw 12% owned at 10K. What do you think here? You liking Kershaw?
Yeah. I mean, he's good. Obviously, that's a bit of an understatement. I don't think there's a big difference between like Kershaw, Darvish, Cole. We have them all projected within like 1.5 of each other. The matchup for all of them is relatively difficult. Arizona's about a league average offense. They've been a little bit better recently, but they're difficult to strike out. Kershaw threw 86 pitches last time out. My assumption is that he kind of just is a 6 inning pitcher going forward. I don't think the Dodgers have any incentive to really push him in games. I think they just kind of need to maintain him until the postseason starts. But I assume that he's not on like a strict pitch count. If it takes him 91 pitches to get through 6, I expect that to be perfectly fine as well. So he is really good. I think he's a solid option here. I think that he's comparable to Cole and Darvish. I don't think he's remotely comparable to Jacob deGrom. So it is kind of interesting to me that Cole is getting nearly double the ownership of Kershaw. Kershaw is getting a little bit more than Darvish, which makes sense given that he is $600 less. So yeah, I like him. And like I was saying before, I wouldn't be surprised if I end up actually just being concentrated on the 4 top pitchers. And that allows me to get more of Kershaw and those other guys in addition to deGrom. And then I'm just spreading it out across cheap bats.
All righty. That works for me. What do you want to do with bats in this one? Because they are 21st and 9th in ownership, but not a lot coming into the Dodgers. I don't have a ton of interest in the offense on either side, although the Dodgers do rank 4th in top stack. I just don't know if I could afford them.
Yeah, and it kind of just goes back to what we were saying before. Do I like the idea of deGrom, a cheap pitcher, and the Dodgers? Sure, you get a really high ceiling there, but you're just avoiding so many other combinations of deGrom plus really good pitcher plus team that realistically doesn't project that much worse than the Dodgers. That it's just so difficult for that to come through. So yeah, I mean, I would like to get to them, but we had talked about it on the show this morning. If you start a lineup on DraftKings with deGrom and Joe Ryan, it leaves you with 3,762 players per position. There is one player in this lineup, well, 2 technically, Chris Taylor 3,700, Joey Gallo 3,400, that are below that mark. So they're just pretty quickly actually forcing you into a different roster construction, which can be okay. But again, there's just so many combinations that aren't going to do that I think I'm more likely to just get to a lot of different value stacks.
I'm with you. I have basically nothing here. Mariners and Padres are a coin flip game. Logan Gilbert, Yu Darvish. Gilbert 7% owned at 8,700. Yu Darvish 10% owned at 10,600. I'm sort of just happy to get whatever I get out of either one of these guys. I would rather get Darvish over Gilbert, but at the same time, I think the Mariners and Padres are both really good. So I'm not really excited to get either pitcher. They're just good pitchers. Yeah,
they're both good pitchers. They both have really difficult matchups in a really good pitcher's park. Darvish this year striking out around 25% of hitters. Gilbert's at 22.5%, 3.82 xFIP for Gilbert, 3.64 for Darvish. They're both good. They just also both happen to have difficult matchups and then kind of just have guys around them that are going to look better. In Gilbert's case, it's Montgomery and Ryan. Clearly, they're getting more ownership as well. And then in Darvish's case, you have Garrett Cole for $300 more, who gets you a 7-point uptick in strikeout percentage. And both guys have difficult matchups, so it's not like you're just looking at it and saying, "Oh, well, Cole's facing the Red Sox," because Darvish is facing the Mariners. And then deGrom's only $1,300 more.
Neither team ranking all that great in top stack, 15th and 20th. Neither team pulling in any ownership. There are individual bats that I would have no problem being one-offs in my lineup. I just don't see myself stacking up this game.
Yeah, a lot of good hitters, just difficult for me to get there on an 11-game slate. It's the kind of game where on a 5 or 6 gamer, it would probably be like, "Oh, we're stacking against Yu Darvish today," but I doubt that's going to be the case for me here.
And now we close it out with Giants and Braves. Before we do that, 650 people in here, 120 likes. Let's run those likes up. Let's hit that thumbs up. We should be able to cross 150 easy. Plus, we got rid of Jason Dominguez, so everybody should be happy. Jacob Junis and Kyle Wright going in this one. No ownership going to Junis at 7,900. 3% ownership going to Kyle Wright at 9,400. I don't have much to say here. Kyle Wright is a good pitcher, but maybe not the best DFS pitcher. He's priced accordingly. I don't need him today, but whatever I get is fine.
Yeah, that's pretty much how I described him this morning. Was if you get some lineups where, let's say you're 5-3 stacking or 4-4 stacking or something, so it's not like you can really improve a one-off because you don't actually have any, then it would be cool to just land where your SP2 is $9,500. You can get a really cheap or a really low owned Kyle Wright and just naturally be contrarian there. But in most lineups, you're just going to be able to say, "Oh, well, I can upgrade these 2 pieces and not lose anything in projection," because Kyle Wright projects the same as guys that are cheaper than him. And then you also now have Alek Manoah on the slate. Manoah only getting 7% right now. So this morning you had Wright pretty much just in like a dead zone of pricing, where it was kind of nice because it just meant if you got there, you were going to have a different roster construction. Now you have Manoah there too that you can go to.
And I would prefer Manoah to Wright anyway. So there's also that.
Right. Yep.
Yes. Kyle Wright.
Yeah.
Bad joke. You said Wright. His name's Kyle Wright.
Yeah.
I was trying to double down on it. It went over. It didn't go over well.
So. I was like, is Mike Wright back?
No. Similarly to the Dodgers, I don't see myself getting to bats in this one, but the Braves are third in top stack and eighth in ownership. Most of that is going to Acuna, but they're just sort of like 5% owned across the board, and then you double up on Acuna. Do you like either stack here?
Not particularly. The Braves, probably shouldn't be difficult to guess, would be the one that I prefer getting to. This park does a lot to kill power, but you also just have a crazy amount of power in the Braves lineup. And they're expensive, but they're not that expensive as a stack. Acuna, Swanson, Riley at the top are all priced up. But then Olsen, d'Arnaud, and Harris are all like low to mid 4K range, which is fine. And then the bottom of the order is free. Also not very good, but free. So, you can still get mix in one of those guys and offset a lot of that expense. So that's the big difference to me between them and the Dodgers. The Dodgers have, 4.7 implied run total right now. Braves are at 4.5. Both teams have a lot of power, but one of them just immediately costs you DeGrom plus any other good pitcher. And the Braves don't, because you can offset it enough. If you go, I doubt that you can really get the top 5 with DeGrom and a good pitcher that easily. Maybe you can if you're just using 2K punts everywhere. But I don't think you have to go too much further down the lineup than that to be able to make it work.
Let's see. DeGrom.
Yeah, so I'm doing the same thing right now.
You might beat me to it. Oh, I just backed out of Fantasy Cruncher. So I'm in Football Showdown. So you got this one.
That's helpful. I forgot their lineup. So Swanson. That's who I needed. So if you go, so you can't, if you go DeGrom, Ryan, and then 1 through 5 on Atlanta, you only have 1,700 per position. So you can't do that. If you make Joe Ryan into Kopech, you have 2,000 per position, so can barely do that. But let's say you play Josh Young at third base instead of Austin Riley, and then you were to play Michael Harris, as your 5th Brave.
Yeah.
Then you're looking at need to put the picture back. Then with Ryan, you're looking at 2,000 per position. And again, that's a pretty expensive version of the Atlanta stack. You're just playing Harris over Riley, and there are 2K hitters everywhere that you can use. So the point being, you aren't going to have a great set of one-offs around your Braves if you go that route, but you can do it. Whereas the Dodgers, you just basically you can't right off the bat.
All righty, sum it up. Favorite pitchers.
DeGrom times 1 million. Cole, Kershaw, Darvish, Ryan, Montgomery.
DeGrom at the top for me. I've got Cole at 25%. I don't have anybody else above 14, so I can't even really say anything. I'm just casting a wide net at pitcher. Favorite stacks.
Baltimore, Texas, Oakland. God, this is not going to be fun. Colorado. Yeah, I might just try and unregister now.
Texas is the team I have the most. I'm basically neutral for the Yankees. I am quite a bit over on the Royals and the Rockies. Pretty big fades on the Twins and the Braves, I guess, which I don't totally love, but that's where we're at. Live Before Lock is coming up next. Don't go anywhere. Stay right on this stream. Hit that like button in the interim. Sign up at BetMGM in the interim, but stick around here until 7:05. They'll take you all the way up to lock. Peace.
What is happening, everybody? It's time for Stokastic MLB Live Before Lock. If you didn't feel like clicking the like button for Adam and Josh, it's all right. You can do it now. So click that like button. Also subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're here to break down the baseball slate. But first, last night, T McBee won all of the money. If you guys didn't win money in the NFL Showdown contest, it's because Terry won it all. Terry, first place on FanDuel yesterday. Payout was nearly $200,000. So congrats to you. That's obviously a massive night. How are you feeling about baseball slate now after the football win?
I was up first thing this morning working on this baseball slate. No lie. I mean, my sleep is so variable. I think people out there have caught on to that. Some days I'm in till 1 p.m. and, just catching up late in the afternoon. But this morning, sprung out of bed bright and early, got right down to work on this baseball slate. And that's all yesterday's news. There's 5 people out there who owe me just short of $1 million because they copied my lineup, like I was just saying in chat. But other than that, we're having a good day.
Do you know who they are? Do we have to hunt them down and steal the money for you?
Yeah, well, now that I've got some funds, we're working on that part of it now. We've got some people in line.
Good money spent to good use. And you know what else is a good use for that money? Using it to put more money into play for tonight's baseball slate.
There you go.
And then you make some more money. And there's some pretty clear-cut ways to do it today, at least in my opinion, because we got Jacob DeGrom on the slate. And if Jacob DeGrom's pitching, I'm probably rostering him in DFS. He's going to be massively popular today. I just don't know how to get away from it. He is projected for 68% ownership on DK, 55% on FanDuel. I know there's some other high-end pitchers on this slate, but DeGrom is so far and away better than every other pitcher in the league right now, at least in my opinion. I assume probably in the opinion of just about everybody else as well. The only question with DeGrom is just, is he healthy or not over the last couple of years? The answer is yes right now. His numbers across the board are so insane. Just everything you look at when it comes to Jacob DeGrom, 1.66 ERA, 1.39 FIP. His strikeout rate this year, north of 40%. I don't know if I've ever seen this before, Terry. The implied run total for the Cubs today, less than 2 runs. I can't remember ever seeing that on any single team. It's impossible for me to get away from Jacob DeGrom. If you guys are playing cash games, he should be 100% owned in cash games. Even in tournaments, I'm leaning towards locking Jacob DeGrom. What are you doing with who I believe you also think is the best pitcher in baseball?
Yeah, Jake DeGrom doesn't compare to anybody in the sport right now. He pitches against history basically every time he takes the mound. I mean, he is that good. He is outrageous. I don't think it's necessarily a mistake if you wanted to say lock him for tournaments. It's not a move that I'm going to make, but I will be, if I'm not right around the field at about half my lineups, I'd be shocked. And I expect to probably be over that as the natural version of the sort comes up. And then we'll see what I do, where I push and pull maybe 20% of those. But I'm going to have a massive Jacob DeGrom investment. Not only is he easily the best pitcher in the game, but he's got one of the better matchups on the slate. He's going up against the Cubs team with a 25.4% strikeout rate against righties this year. That's 28th in baseball. They're exactly league average at creating runs with a 100 WRC plus at 20th in baseball, 16th with a 156 ISO and a 2.88% home run rate. There's just nothing to worry about. And the upside is massive. The strikeout upside's massive. Everything to love about Jake DeGrom here. No doubt about it.
Yeah, it's for me. I'm pretty sure I'm just going to lock him in, and especially for maybe FanDuel where there's just a lot of you're only rostering one pitcher. You can make a case like, hey, I need a cheap pitcher in one of these lineups, or I want to get some exposure to some of these other high end guys. For DK, I'm just playing all Jacob DeGrom. He's going to be in all my lineups today. He's really safe, even if he isn't the highest scoring pitcher on this league. He's going to be one of them, and he probably is going to be the highest scorer pitcher. So to me, I'm going to be playing a lot of DeGrom. Maybe other people will try to fade him. It's just not something I'm going to be looking to do in this spot. We've got some super chats here. First of all, Terry, this is ridiculous. Red Skittles super chat. Congrats, Team McBee. He doesn't need more money. You don't have to super chat and leave Terry more. You're just leaving him money like, oh, Terry, you want all this money? No, you need more money. It's like you're a famous person. Yeah, you're in a movie, you win some Oscars, and all of a sudden everybody goes, hey, you just made millions of dollars. You need free giveaways at award shows and stuff. But
you don't fill the Scrooge McDuck vault with a bunch of gold to dive into by refusing $20 super chats, my friend. So come on, they're all welcome.
We appreciate you, Red Skittles, and for sure, congrats to Terry. Another one right here, Elvis Andrus. Congrats, Terry, even though you hate me. I like it. Somebody made a burner just for that.
Yeah, I like that somebody's been trolling the last couple shows with that account. That's pretty solid. We don't hate Elvis Andrus. As far as I know, he hasn't done anything to personally offend me or the public at large. I don't think he's like a what's his face from the Braves who beats women and drives drunk. Ozuna.
Marcell
I don't think he's
Ozuna.
an Ozuna type.
Yeah,
but He's just not a good baseball player, guys. I know he's had a hot 10 days. I know he's ripping home run after home run. He's not a good baseball player. We have like 19 years of proof that he's not a good baseball player.
I mean, there was a point. He's actually having a not. I'm going to put, I know you don't like to give Elvis Andrus his credit, Terry, but 107 WRC plus this year, 2.7 wins above replacement. He's been terrible a lot of years. He's actually been kind of decent this year. So one thing I think that was, and we don't have to get too far off track here just because somebody made a burner account to troll you, but Andrus was maybe the only player on the Oakland A's, or one of the only players on the A's that had value this year. But why cut him? Why not trade him at the trade deadline and try to get, maybe, a lottery ticket prospect for him? That was a really weird decision.
I mean, I think maybe it speaks to that just, nobody would have traded for him, but you would think that, yes, somebody like if they value defense at shortstop, or if they just don't care about hitting and they needed a defensive shortstop, or if they're buying into, yes, he's hit 13 home runs this year. He's stolen 9 bags. He's got a 107 WRC plus, still only getting on base at a 308 clip, which does not a leadoff hitter make in my mind. But yeah, I could see, that's why they're the Oakland A's for one thing. I mean, they make terrible decisions like that. So yeah, that's how he ended up here. But yes, I will give him credit. He has pulled himself together for so far the 3rd year of his long career that has started in 2009, in which he might finish with a positive WRC plus. For his career, 14% worse than average creating runs. The only 2 years in his long career, 2016 and 2017, where he was over league average in WRC plus. So
another follow-up super chat from Elvis Andrus. Put some respect on my name. I stay angry, Terry. Keep feeding me. Nom, 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 nom. Boy, Elvis Andrus is really
we'll keep the insults coming if you keep the super chats coming, Elvis. Yeah. That's no problem.
This is even easier way to get rich than winning GPPs for
Seriously,
NFL Showdown.
Welcome to the anti-Elvis Andrus show, everybody.
Yeah, we got to find more players to really pick on over here and see if they pop up and start leaving us some money as well. Super chat.
That is why these shows are not 1 minute long.
Super chat from Cyber Real Estate. And I know Cyber Real Estate now because he's left us a few of these super chats. I know that he's talking about over on Jock Market. He wants to know, hello, who's your one pick outfielder of the day? So if you had to pick one outfielder to have a really big fantasy game, who would you be going with tonight?
Taking a look at the board, if he's in the lineup, I don't think we have the Cards lineup yet, but I like Tyler O'Neill sitting there. I'm getting a lot of power for the Cards today in my home run model. He projects out fairly nicely. He's not overly expensive, so you're not paying a star caliber price to get him. 54 on DK. I guess y'all are paying up on DK. 32 on the FanDuel slate. I'm also seeing a lot of power for the Orioles. So Anthony Santander is sitting right there for me. Another bat, 4,900 on DK, 2,900 on FanDuel, showing a lot of power potential. And I just like that, or the look of that Orioles opportunity today, going up against Corey Abbott, top to bottom. They're the top team in my home run model, and they're showing a ton of power. So if you want to grab a cheap outfielder from them, you can go to Santander. But if you had to go very cheap and just drop down to Kyle Stowers, I don't think you're necessarily losing all that much in terms of like general power upside. Might catch a cheap home run for the dead minimum price. So that gives you a little bit of a range of different salaries to work with there.
All right, and we're going to talk about some other pitchers who are not Jacob DeGrom in a second. But first, if you guys want to be cool like Terry and win close to $250,000 playing NFL DFS, here's the way to do it. You sign up for our tools, and if you check out right now using the promo code SCRAMBLE, you are going to get 7 days of our NFL DFS projections and all our tools for just $7. Just make sure to use that promo code SCRAMBLE at checkout. And one other thing of note also, today is the last day for this promotion. It ends tonight. So if you've been thinking about signing up, now is the last time to do it. Be cool like T McBee. Win $250,000. Get some bills paid. As Terry told me last night, it's going to keep the lights on. So sign up using our tools. We got player projections, ownership projections, really everything that you need for NFL DFS. And it's only $7 right now using the promo code SCRAMBLE. All right. So the obvious picket pitcher here, it's Jacob DeGrom, Terry. But if we're going away from Jacob DeGrom on the high end, or if we're just looking for another high-end pitcher to pair him up with for DK purposes, who is your second favorite pay-up option at pitcher?
So fortunately, we've got a few premium type guys to work with in the Yu Darvishes, the Garrett Coles of the world, Clay Kershaw, certainly. The guy who projects generally better for me is Kyle Wright, but I know that's probably not the answer the field's looking for out there. So why don't we talk about Garrett Cole against the Red Sox here for a minute? You're paying a premium for him, 11-1 on FanDuel, 10-9 on DK, but he projects out. He's got an extremely strong strikeout rate for the season, 32.1% strikeout rate, a 2.78x FIP. He allows the occasional home run, a 3.53% home run rate on a 37.2% hard hit. We know we're dealing with that with Garrett Cole, but he definitely is one of the stronger pitchers in the league. And arguably on talent, even at the price, he's a little bit under-owned on both sites. Only 10% on FanDuel, slightly below 20% on DK is the last update I dropped in here. I think there's maybe a little bit more upside. It's just difficult to get there. It's not impossible. The guys on the previous show were looking at some Cole and DeGrom pairings, and I think they stumbled across some where you could go Cole, DeGrom, a Judge one-off, and then still some reasonable stacks. So it depends on how, risk averse you are, how willing to get down into the dregs of some of these hitters you are. But I think you can get to that kind of a combination. If you want to shave a little bit of money, I do like the Kyle Wrights, the Logan Gilberts of the world. I think there are some serviceable mid-range guys, and then there's some relative stars like the Kershaws, the Darvishes of the world there too.
Yeah, it's for me, I'm really going to have difficulty getting to other high-end pitchers just because for me, like I said before, I'm locking in Jacob DeGrom on DraftKings just because of salary constraints. I would love to come here and say, yeah, I'm playing all Jacob DeGrom and Garrett Cole. I'm playing all Jacob DeGrom and Clayton Kershaw. Kind of hard to do with some of the salary constraints. So that's the one opportunity cost to playing a lot of Jacob DeGrom is there isn't a whole lot of other flexibility to spend up for other pitchers. I'm still finalizing my lineups, but I don't think there's going to be another pitcher on the high end that I get a whole bunch of. If I had to roster one of them right now, the one that I think I'm going to be pairing the most with DeGrom is going to ultimately be Clayton Kershaw. A couple of reasons. Number one, he's considerably cheaper than Garrett Cole and Yu Darvish today on DK, and he's lesser owned compared to those two. And he's Clayton Kershaw. He's had some issues with injuries this year, which has been the case of Kershaw at this point in his career. But when healthy, he's been as good as ever. And actually, this is the best year he's had in quite a few years when he's been on the mound. So Kershaw is my favorite amongst those high ends for those reasons. And then over for FanDuel also, you're getting a good price discount on him. Sub 10K for Clayton Kershaw in a good matchup against Arizona. You don't usually see him get that cheap of a price tag.
Yeah, it's definitely a very nice price. I do have some, minor concerns about, all right, if he's not pitching that efficiently, does he get to the quality start, right? There's a little bit of that lingering in the back of my mind, particularly when we're talking about match it up against Cole, who I do think is going to get that depth unless he's getting dinged. And then if he's getting dinged, it doesn't really matter. It's also a decent strikeout rate against lefties for Arizona, 21%, 12th in baseball. But that said, if we're looking at the heads up, 20.8% for the Red Sox, 20.3%, 7th ranked for the Red Sox against right-handed pitching. So Cole also not in the most premium of strikeout matchups. I don't think you're making a mistake if you go either way. It's kind of a salary thing. It's kind of a feel and, spread it out thing, but equal shares of both of those guys as an SP2 or an alternative SP1. But I agree with you. For every share of, Garrett Cole that you roster or Clayton Kershaw that you roster as an SP1, that's a share of Jacob DeGrom that you're leaving on the table. And I don't know how frequently I want to do that.
Yeah. So for me, once again, it's going to be hard for me to prioritize other pitchers. If I am getting to another spend up guy, for me, it's going to be Clayton Kershaw. We have a question in the Discord channel right now from Cactus Jack. He's talking about one of my theories here, which is the stoppable force meeting a movable object. He wants to know if it works the other way, where there's a unstoppable force against the immovable object. And he's saying that nobody likes the Padres and nobody likes Logan Gilbert. If I had to bet my life on one of these to win a GPP, which side would it be? So I am not really that high on Logan Gilbert in terms of if we're talking about unstoppable forces or unmovable, I'm thinking Jacob DeGrom, not Logan Gilbert. Yeah. Gilbert's actually been fairly disappointing this year because I thought he was going to be a top of the rotation ace type pitcher. And it's not to say he's been bad. He's just fallen short of my expectations based on how well he pitched last year because he might have a 3.23 ERA this year, but it has been buoyed by some good luck. He's a 77.6% strand rate. So his expected ERA is actually north of 4. The Padres are a contrarian team I like getting to on this slate because Logan Gilbert is actually a pitcher I think is a little bit overvalued. So not a pitcher that I'm getting to today. And then a pitcher I do like stacking against a little bit. Do you have any Logan Gilbert takes, Terry?
I think I'll maybe take the flip side of that one. You're definitely tangling with a tough lineup, right? It's not an easy lineup to deal with. They don't strike out that much. San Diego, 20.2% strikeout rate is 4th best in baseball against righties. Creating runs 14% better than average now. So there's definitely a lot of threat there. But I agree that he's not had that great season I was looking for, but I prefer xFIP to xERA. So a 3.82 xFIP is reasonable, a little bit better than that expected ERA number. The strikeouts are right around league average, 22.5% with a 10.8% swinging strike rate. I think that dip is the part where the disappointment comes through. Last year was 25.4% strikeout rate, 12.5% swinging strike rate. On any given night, though, if he's finding that strikeout pitch, that put away pitch at 1.9% ownership for 9,400, I can take a few shots. 8,700 and 6.8% on DK, I definitely think is worth a few shots there. That's basically a both sides are for me, though. That's really dead even. It's not that, like you said, he's neither immovable force nor whatever, unstoppable object.
Yeah.
or got that the other way around. But I don't think the Pods lineup is necessarily that either. So I see them both as kind of middle of the road options on this one.
Yeah. So for me, I mean, I still just believe in we're going to talk about stacks in a little bit, but I still believe in the talent in this Padres offense. It's been another spot that just been a disappointing team post trade deadline. Cause you think about what we thought the Padres were going to be at this point in the season when they traded for Juan Soto and Josh Bell. You know, we thought Fernando Tatis was going to be in the lineup now, but lo and behold, he's a moron. So he's not in the lineup. And then also just Juan Soto is not had a Juan Soto season. Last year, he was the runner up to win the MVP award. He's been good this year, just not as good as he was last year. So both sides a little bit disappointing as far as I'm concerned.
He was Ted Williams last year with some of his numbers that he put up last year. And he's just, to say that he's, to expect that from a guy every single season, year in, year out is a little bit much to ask, but he's been a disappointment. And then the lineup is still loaded with guys like Ha-Seong Kim, who has sure had a nice season. He had a serviceable season, a few serviceable seasons in Korea, but he's not a premium player. The back end with Will Myers, Trent Grisham, Austin Nola, we know who those guys are. Jerks and Profar up top. Another guy is, decent prospect pedigree several years ago, never really delivered on it, having an okay year, 11% better than average for run creation, gets on base at a decent clip and some power, but another guy, I'm not really afraid of him. So it's really Soto, Machado, maybe some Bell, maybe some Cronenworth in there. You get through that a few times over, and I don't think it's the most deadly lineup to tangle with.
Got a cool super chat here. Sem Ozma. Sending this in as a thank you for not playing the $35 GPP on FanDuel last night. He shipped the 50K solo.
Nice.
So first of all, congrats to you. That's awesome. Also, just in general, the run that we've been on as a group here has been fairly ridiculous as of late. Just a lot of big wins. We're getting a lot of people messaging us. If you guys want to send some of your wins over to the Stokastic Hall of Fame over on Twitter, you could get a free month subscription to the site. But yeah, we've had a lot of big wins around these parts lately. It's pretty cool to see.
It doesn't stop. And I mean, I think we had both the DraftKings and the FanDuel tourney represented last night. So
yeah, so you won the FanDuel last night. And then we had two people split over on DK. Also, there was a few people that tied for first over on DK. I think the payout was like $230,000. And yeah, it was two other people who were members over at the site. So definitely been a lot of big wins as of late.
And I saw a lot of people specifically calling out Matt Kajeski for throwing out the Disley pick on the show yesterday. So well done by him.
Yeah, we had some good ones, I think, because Matt and I both agreed that our favorite captain / MVP play was Jerry Jeudy. And then Matt had said his favorite value play was Will Disley, and that ended up, being nuts last night.
Thank you for that, because I did actually click the little up arrow on Jerry Jeudy for a few extra lineups there, and that very well might have been one of them. So I appreciate that.
Could have been.
Yeah,
who knows?
Help me out.
Who knows? All right, let's talk about some of the value pitchers on this slate, because we talked about the pay up options, and that's really where the majority of my exposure is going to be. And it seems like yours as well, Terry, because we got a lot of high end pitchers, and pricing restrictions, kind of a thing of the past for baseball DFS. It's been fairly easy to spend up at pitcher. But if you were looking to save money at pitching today, who is the cheap pitcher that stands out the most to you, if any?
Depends how we're really defining cheap. And I think with the relative upside, the relative pricing on some of those
below 9K, we'll say below 9K.
Okay. So then that fits perfectly. It's Joe Ryan for me, pitching against the Royals. I think Ryan's a nice option, 24.2% strikeout rate. His xFIP leaves something to be desired on the season, 4.48 with a 4.05 ERA, but he induces a nice amount of swinging strikes at 11.3%. I just think there's plenty of upside going up against that KC lineup. There's plenty of strikeouts in there now. Yeah, they've got some guys for power in that lineup, so I think you can roster maybe both sides of it, get to some shares of Pasquantino, Nick Prado, Sal Perez, obviously, Melendez and Bobby Witt up at the top. But I do like the upside for Joe Ryan at price. I think there's some room for that play. And on FanDuel, he's not getting any ownership attention.
Yeah. So for me, that's the one that I'm getting to most frequently. I have a couple of flyer plays for cheap that I want to run by you and just hear what you think. So two guys that I think are sensible is SP2s on DK because of their price point. I don't think we need to consider them on FanDuel. It would be more specifically to DK as SP2s. One of them is Michael Kopech, just because of his matchup against the Colorado Rockies. The Rockies are away from Coors Field. That's always an issue for them. They're facing a right-hand pitcher. That is also an issue for them. So Michael Kopech, it's been another pitcher who's been pretty disappointing this year. He just hasn't transitioned as well from reliever to a starter as I thought he was going to. But still, he's really cheap. He's $7,100 on DK. He's got a great matchup, single-digit ownership. The other one is Ken Waldichuk, who's picking up very minimal ownership as well. And I'm sure, Terry, you're familiar with Ken Waldichuk just from him coming up through the Yankees farm system and being the guy who is the biggest piece in the trade for Frankie Montas. Another guy, one of the top pitching prospects in baseball. If you look at the pitching prospect rankings over on Fangraphs, he's one of the best ones overall. He's the number one pitching prospect in the A's organization right now, ranked as the 35th overall best prospect in baseball. His minor league numbers were really good. His big league starts to this point haven't really been great, but it's only 10 innings. I don't really know what we could pull from that, but he's pretty decent zips and steamer projections for a young pitcher. Expect to strike out more than a hitter per inning, 4.43 ERA over at zips, 3.85 for steamer. But the key here is he's just so cheap. The price tag on Ken Waldichuk over on DK is 6,100. So do either of those guys stand out to you, Michael Kopech or Ken Waldichuk?
Yeah, those were going to be my two answers if you had given me a little bit less price to work with. I like both of those pitchers. They project reasonably close to one another, like right in the middle of my board. Everything you said about Waldichuk, dead on. You just didn't know the fact that I drafted him in my rookie draft of my dynasty league that I talk about all the time. So he's a member of my franchise, just not of my franchise that I root for professionally anymore. But I was kind of expecting that when I took him. He was going to be a big part of whatever deal they made. Like the kid a lot. I think it's an interesting spot for him. I think you could definitely find some strikeouts in this matchup against Texas. We'll see how deep he goes in the game. We'll see if he's got his premium stuff, but he's like a funky lefty with a big time slider and an interesting pitcher to at least keep an eye on. I don't know how much you need him on this slate, but if you are saying, hey, I'm jamming bats in here, I'm ignoring the big time SP2, I'm going DeGrom and cheap pitchers, I think he's definitely on the board. And then the Kopech side, yeah, it's a little bit of a letdown with him as well so far from kind of what we thought he would be, this elite strikeout artist with a big arm. 21.4% strikeout rate, over 114 and a third this year. What concerns me even more is the 12% walk rate. He needs to find that command, needs to find that control. He doesn't want to be like a Robbie Ray type, and that would require a lot more strikeouts from him. But I do think he does have that premium stuff. So I think there's upside. Rockies against the righty on the road is just a theme. It's something I always want to go to. So I think Adam was talking about the Rockies as a potential value stack. I do think there's merit in throwing some bats at him. Nobody's going there. They're super cheap. And like I said, he walks the world that isn't striking that many guys out. But if he spiked an upside game here for price, I wouldn't be surprised at all. So he's definitely on that list as well.
Yeah, I'm actually playing a little bit of both sides of that game, mostly because there's no ownership on either side. And this is to the point that Cactus Jack was asking us in the chat for. This is really kind of more up my alley, the stoppable force versus the movable object, because Kopech has not been good this year. The Rockies also not good against right-hand pitching, but this game's being played in Chicago. That is still a hitter-friendly park. Park downgrade, obviously, for Colorado. Everything on the road is a park downgrade, but there is potential for offense in that spot. So I think that Kopech does warrant some consideration than stacking against him as well. I'm right around 10% Kopech at the moment, so a little bit overweight, right around where I am with Waldichuk as well. So slightly overweight to both those guys. Those are my two flyers that are single-digit owned today. And there's nobody else that I'm really eyeing. If you were going just way off the board at pitchers, is there anybody else you'd consider?
I mean, like Montgomery's fine for a few shares against the Brewers there, although they do have a few guys who just pound left-handed pitching. He's been very good since going to St. Louis. They told him it was okay to throw a fastball, and he's been doing it pretty well. Maybe Dean Kramer you could squeeze a little bit of value out of against the Nationals at 73 on DK. Certainly not at 87 on FanDuel. I want nothing to do with him there. Not really anybody else. It's kind of a top end pitching slate for me that peters out in that high sevens, low eights kind of a range. Like all right, Pavetta against the Yanks, I think he just offers up too much premium contact, even against this diminished version of the Yanks. So,
and then anything else for you that you want to bring up here when it comes to the pitching, or should we move over? I do think this is a pretty clear-cut pitching slate. I'm playing a lot of Jacob DeGrom. We've talked about other guys, but I want to make it very clear. DeGrom's my guy today.
Absolutely. Smash DeGrom. I have him like a tier and a half above everybody else in terms of the fantasy point projection here. Just a killer, absolute smash spot. If you want to protect against that eventuality where he comes out and strikes out only 6, doesn't get the full complement of innings, the Cubs put 4 runs on him, then you're still working with like the Garrett Coles, the Clay Kershaws of the world, and you're still spending a similar amount of salary. I just don't see it as a value-based pitching slate.
All right, I've got a really good offer for you here, Terry. Ooh, today's show is sponsored by BetMGM. So here's the deal they got going on with BetMGM. If you guys haven't signed up yet, if you place a $10 bet on any football game, they're going to give you $200. It's technically the verbiage is if any team scores a touchdown, team's going to score a touchdown in the game. So you place a $10 bet on any football game, they're giving you $200 when you sign up by using the link. And you could find that link below in the description box and click on that. Also, we'll be throwing a link into chat that you guys could click on, also direct you back to the site and find that link to BetMGM. This is the easiest way to make money in sports betting, easiest way to make money in DFS. Free sign-up offers. It's also not going to be around for very long. So BetMGM, originally they had told us it was only going to be available for Sunday, for week 1 of the football season, but a bunch of people signed up. They decided to extend it. So it's also going to be valid for this week. So I don't know exactly when it's going to end. As of right now, they've told us this Sunday for the end of NFL week 2, but it's something you guys want to act on now because it's free money. You don't want to pass up free money, and there's just no risk to you. You're going to be collecting this money. So I know, Terry, you're a rich guy now, but you wouldn't be turning down $200. And I also want to give you guys a baseball bet as well that maybe you could spend some of that free money on. Here's something I've been doing a lot lately. I think when elite starting pitchers are on the mound, there's too big of a gap between their odds to get the win bonus and their odds to actually win the game. So depending where you look at the Mets right now, they're anywhere from -400 to -420 favorites. So it stands to reason, Terry, Jacob DeGrom probably fairly likely to get the win bonus, right?
I would think so, yeah.
So here's where I think this makes for a good bet, something I bet on today. Jacob DeGrom to pick up the win bonus is -170. That is a gigantic difference between him to get the win and then for the Mets to win the game outright, especially because Jacob DeGrom, there's no innings restriction on him anymore. There's no real restrictive pitch count. He went 7 innings in each of his last 2 starts. So that's a bet I really like today. Jacob DeGrom -170 to get the win. Does that make sense to
you? And just as a comparison point, what are the Mets to win on that line? So it was like -400.
Yeah, I said they were like, depending what book you look, they're north of -400. Depends what book you look at. But yes, I was like -425.
Stark difference. And there's no reason to think that Jacob DeGrom couldn't easily cruise through 7 innings. Even if he's having a mediocre start for Jacob DeGrom, he could cruise through 7 innings against this Cubs team. So yeah, I like that a lot. That's actually a really sharp way to play the win. I hadn't thought about that, but that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, because I've been trying to find ways to bet Jacob DeGrom when he starts because he's just so ridiculously good. But like, what am I going to do when the money line's like -420? Like that's out of hand. There's no value to that kind of price tag.
9.5 strikeouts today is like an uncomfortable-ish kind of a line. I do think he's got a very good shot at it, but that's not a comfy one.
So this is what I found to be the most reasonable ways to bet Jacob DeGrom. And there's been some of these spots lately where they've really made sense and something I made a good amount of money on. So this is a new, I wouldn't say new bet, obviously, but for me, at least something that I've added more recently that I've been going after. It's been going well. So Jacob DeGrom -170 to get the win bonus. And I keep calling it win bonus because I'm thinking in DFS terms, we're just to get the win outright.
Right.
Yeah. All right, let's hit on offenses now. And starting with, we got a super chat from Eddie Seja. And Eddie wants to know, who is the best GPP stack on DK and is 5-3 a good GPP strategy? Yeah, I have no issues at all with 5-3 stacks. I actually make a lot of 5-2s, 5-1-1s. Like I don't force myself to make 5-3 stacks, but yeah, it's certainly a highly correlated good lineup build. But to answer his question, Terry, what is the #1 overall stack that you want to be getting to on tonight's slate?
So just pulling up our stacks board here, top 2 teams on the board are the Yankees and the Orioles going to the AL East here. I mentioned Pivetta against the Yankees. He's pitching against the diminished version of the Yanks, but he still gives up a lot of premium contact. And there are several very, very capable premium hitters who could drive the ball against him in that lineup still. So really, we're just playing that, do some of these scrubs that are around the Giancarlo Stantons and Aaron Judges of the world get on base. And are they setting the table for these guys? Are they delivering a few key hits for us? And then are we getting those big knocks out of the big bats? They're drawing a lot of ownership though. Stanton 34% on FanDuel, 15% on DK is more reasonable. Judge 25% on DK, 26% on FanDuel, paying a premium for them. It's a little bit more difficult for me to see for the Yanks, but 44.5% hard hit rate and a 3.03% home run rate for Pivetta, definitely chaseable. The team that I like better, though, is the Orioles. Like I said, they're topping out my home run model. Basically, from top to bottom in that lineup, I'm getting a very nice home run upside mark. There are some cheap bats. There are guys who are drawing high ownership, but not quite to the levels of the Judge and Stanton of the world. And then I think it's easier to go to decent bats while offsetting cost and ownership with this lineup. They're going up against Corey Abbott, who's so far in his 32 inning sample over 5 starts, a 5.88% home run rate, 12% barrel rate on the season. I think there's a lot of upside there for the Orioles, and on DK especially, it looks like they're getting not as much attention as they should be. Bat like Santander for 4,900 going under 10% owned in this spot. I think that's probably a mistake. So I like that spot a lot.
So that is actually the offense that I have the most exposure to. So I could certainly get on board with that. If I'm just looking strictly from a leverage purpose, though, the team that I'm most overweight to today on DK is the Los Angeles Dodgers. So they're going up against Merrill Kelly, who by no means do I think Merrill Kelly is a bad pitcher. I think Merrill Kelly is very solid, but there's a couple things going on here with the Dodgers. Number one, people are paying up for pitchers so much. The fact that the Dodgers are only picking up 3% ownership as a team, and they have the top stack odds for us on the entire slate. So the opportunity cost, I could still play DeGrom with Dodger stacks, but I have to go cheap with my SP2. This is where the Michael Kopechs and the Ken Waldichuks come into play for me. I have some of them mixed in with Dodger stacks. Let me pay up for the premium bats. And that's a lineup build I don't think people are really going to be on today. And it's one I really like for tournaments, because when we've got the Dodgers, once again, number one top stack odds for us on the slate, just south of 10%, and then only 3% projected ownership. I think that's a really good leverage spot and is just going to put us on totally different lineup builds from the field.
Yeah, that's a great spot. And they're firmly on that list that we've talked about all season long. Just if this team's going on their own, just jump on it. It's an all-star team from top to bottom with the Dodgers there. I agree. Merrill Kelly is a good pitcher, definitely a good real life pitcher. Maybe doesn't spike that DFS upside, but he's easily capable of pitching through any team a couple times over clean. But these Dodgers are just premium bats. And on the DK slate, everybody except for Trey Turner in the low single digits, definitely a mistake. Trey still under 10%, easy enough to get to. They're getting a little bit more attention on FanDuel, like Muncy at 2,500 with multi-position is drawing nearly 20%. Mookie and Trey up top drawing a little bit over 10%, but easily playable. A lot of multi-position, well, not as much multi-position anymore, but a lot of flexibility in price and some very unpopular bats in the Joey Gallos, the Cody Bellingers, the Chris Taylors of the world down at the bottom, who I'm always happy to roster. So I can definitely get to Dodgers top to bottom, and I hope they're showing up in this lineup build that I'm running now.
Yeah, so pulling up some of these Dodgers bats individually right now, because I know the number one thing people are going to say is, yeah, well, they're really expensive. Absolutely, they are. But I don't mind some of those down order bats like you were talking about before. Yeah, Bellinger just kind of sucks at this point in his career, to be honest. But guys like Chris Taylor, Joey Gallo's been a little bit reinvigorated since coming to Los Angeles. We know the power upside he is there. Those are two reasonably priced bats at the end of the order that kind of make the lineup fit more easily. Justin Turner, another one, has a price tag that's not too much of a problem. So I do look at the Dodgers as a team that, while they are pricey, if I'm pairing them with, like I said, Ken Waldichuk, Michael Kopech, who are a little bit cheaper starting pitchers, I'm actually able to make it to these price points while still having Jacob deGrom in the lineup. So that actually is my favorite tournament build today. So that is going to be my answer right there for you, Eddie. And let's look in the Discord chat. If you guys have any questions in Discord, throw those in. Last one was still from Cactus Jack. But what else are you prioritizing at offense, Terry? What team have we not talked about that really stands out to you?
Let's see what's in this lineup build. I just finished it. Looks like, oh, good. It's Yankees, Dodgers, Orioles is my top 3 teams. So that worked out pretty damn well. But I'm getting a decent amount of some of the Royals. We talked about them maybe going as a both sides-er in that one. Also getting some Twins. There were some very nice value prices and some clear home run upside bats in that lineup. So that's one I'm always happy to go to. Some Braves, which is just one that comes up for me all the time. And when they're under-owned, I'm definitely going to be pushing some chips chips in on their spot. So I'm getting those teams. Looks like I'm getting to a little bit of Red Sox, which I might poke at a little bit. I don't love that going up against Cole, and they seemed like they were kind of fairly priced or appropriately priced. So I'm not getting much of a discount. So I kind of want to see what they're paired with. I suspect that I might be getting those in just some clunker lineups that came through with, a mid-range pitcher, and they just happen to get swept up in them. Outside of that, maybe some St. Louis as well. I don't want to leave them off the table. That's actually probably the team that I'll use to replace some of those Red Sox shares, because they didn't get to as much St. Louis as I want to, just running this natural crunch. So I might give that a little bit of elbow grease right now.
Yeah, I think that. Well, I'm happy. So my 3 most rostered stacks today, Terry: the Dodgers, the Yankees, the Orioles. So the exact same 3 as you. So
you at the top or the bottom of the standings, my friend.
Yeah. So it seems like we are on the same page as far as those teams go. We haven't really talked about the Yankees here really in depth as much as the other teams. At least I haven't. But going up against Nick Pivetta, a pitcher who isn't terrible, but certainly isn't good either. But he's going up against the Yankees lineup. There's just so much firepower in the Yankees order. And the thing that stands out the most to me about Pivetta going up against the Yankees lineup, low strikeout rate this year, it's dipped to 22.4%. And his ground ball rate is only 38.3%. He's never been a high ground ball pitcher for his career. This is an issue. If you're playing against the Yankees and you're giving up a lot of fly balls and you're not generating a lot of swing and misses, that's a recipe to potentially give up a whole bunch of homers for his career. He's been a pitcher that is an above average home run to fly ball rate guy, 15.3%. There's potential danger here for Nick Pivetta, especially in this matchup. So I like the upside of the Yankees. And it seems like, once again, we're kind of on the same page with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Just all the hard contact that Pivetta gives up is something that I'm targeting. And that's been a real reality for him for years. I mean, that's just who he is. He's a serviceable major league pitcher. He can find some strikeouts. He can find some upside. It wouldn't be the craziest thing in the world if he came out and pitched 6 clean innings and found, half a dozen strikeouts against this Yankees team either. But there's just so much upside around the Judge and Stanton part of this lineup that I just kind of want to be a part of it. I don't want to leave it on the table. It's getting into the Andujar, Kiner Falefa, Trevino, Marwin part of this lineup that gets a little bit concerning, but nobody's going there, and you're getting to Yankee stacks. That's what enables you to get to Yankee stacks super cheap and combine them with like DeGrom and Kershaw, DeGrom and Cole, and just kind of run with it. So yeah, they're very much on the board, obviously by virtue of who they are and what the spot looks like. I fear a little bit the massive shares of ownership on Judge and Stanton up at the top. That's the one thing. There's going to be a lot of copycats, but I think if you're making different decisions elsewhere, you'll be fine as usual.
And the other thing too, if you're making full 5-man stacks of the Yankees, like you said, the ownership is a little bit concentrated, so down the order, those guys are just unowned. It's the ownership is going to Judge. The ownership is going to stand a little bit on Gleyber Torres as well, but like Oswaldo Cabrera, Josh Donaldson, Kiner Falefa, Jose Trevino, Marwin Gonzalez. These guys are basically unowned today. Mm-hmm. So I don't think the 5-man stacks of the Yankees is going to be popular. It's just these individual guys as one-offs that are going to be popping up in a lot of lineups.
And that would be great. I'd see, because I'm going to probably, to go back a few minutes and go to that 5-3 question. Yeah. I agree with your answer there. I'm always looking to build out 2 correlated stacks in my lineup. So I'm mostly a FanDuel player, as people know. So I'm almost always building 4 4s and 4 3s. I do like the idea of getting to the one-off. I do like what it can do to make your lineup both unique and help pay for things. So I do build a lot of 4 3s, but I don't tend to go to like 3 3 2s and stuff like that all that often. I do mix some in, but really I'm looking for those full stacks. And if I'm getting some unowned guys who do correlate with the Judge and Stanton part of this lineup, from down at the bottom there, yeah, I don't think IKF is a good hitter. I don't think he's a very good player. I don't really like him on this baseball team. I was bad mouthing him last weekend, and my uncle's done nothing but text me 3 letters with an exclamation points because he's hit 3 home runs and he's barreled a couple balls since then, but he's still not good at baseball. But at this price, this popularity, just click them, put them together with Judge and Stanton and the rest of them and take the full stack. I think that's the way to approach it here.
That was one of my, because I think I know which day you might have texted him, just kind of going off some recent Yankee games. One of the funniest games of the year, maybe funny isn't the right word, but just coincidental. The Yankees played that game against the Twins. Here's how all the runs were scored. A Sanchez homer for Minnesota, former Yankee. And then the Yankees runs were scored with Josh Donaldson homer and Isaiah Kiner Falefa homer. Mm-hmm. So it was this weird thing where just players from their former teams accounted for all of the runs in that game. Was that when you texted him?
Yeah, it was either that one or we talked on Sunday of, I think it was last week. And then I think that was just before that game, but it might have just been just after, and that's why he came up. I forget what the order was, but yeah, it was right around there. And then just over the last 10 days, he's had an Elvis Andrus kind of a stretch.
Yeah, he's been don't start triggering Elvis Andrus. Maybe Isaiah kind of maybe Isaiah kind of Falef will start leaving us super chats and asking to put some respect on his name. Got a question.
Now, that is an interesting comp. If we consider defense, that's an interesting comp. I think maybe I would rather have Elvis just because of his defense at shortstop, because I'm writing off both of them offensively as hitters.
I'd rather have Elvis Andrus's contract for his career. Like if I could just be one of the players, because Andrus, he got $100 million contract at one point, didn't he?
I believe he did. I think before WRC Plus was important to people, I think he got nicely paid.
Yeah, there was a point in time where he was very, very well paid.
He was considered a star for a while, which is weird.
Yeah, he was also
like that next tier maybe from a star, but like to get paid like that,
Yeah, let me pull up some of his earlier numbers because he was good. He's also old now. He's 34 years old. But there was a point in time. I don't want to say he wasn't good as a hitter. He was like 97, 93 WRC plus guy, but he was a 3-4 win player just because of his defense.
Yeah.
But then once he got older, it kind of started to deteriorate a little bit. But he did here was his peak.
The D is unimpeachable. I mean, the defense is certainly there.
2016, a 109 WRC plus and 3.2 wins above replacement. 2017, 105 WRC plus, 4.4 wins above replacement. So those years where he was able to be competent on offense, which he's doing this year also, he really did have some valuable seasons because of how good he was on defense.
But that's 2 years out of a career that started in 2009.
True.
That's 14% worse than average creating runs for the career. That's not what I'm looking for.
Got a question in our premium Discord. DM Brian 007 wants to know, what is my single entry stack for today? My single entry stack is the Los Angeles Dodgers. That is what I've landed on. So the Dodgers are going to be the team that I am playing in single entry. Let me make sure that I've clicked the right one here. Yeah. So I'm going with the Dodgers in single entry. I'm just trying to decide if I want Kopech or Waldichuk lineups to be my SP2 in single entry, but it's going to be DeGrom. It's going to be the Dodgers, and then the rest of it a little bit up in the air. And I'll decide sometime before the slate starts, but Dodgers, that's going to be the single entry stack that I'm rolling with today.
Yeah, I love the leverage you're getting out of that Dodgers spot. Do you think it would get a little chalky if you went Dodgers Orioles there? Is that getting a little bit?
I think it does. A Dodger stack, I don't even think it matters who else is in the lineup. The Dodgers are going to be so unpopular. And then also, like I said, going with either Waldichuk or Kopech as my SP2. And keep in mind, too, this is single entry. So single entry, I could tell you fairly confidently that the way the ownership is going to go, the White Sox, the Twins, the Orioles, the Yankees, at least for single entry purposes, that's going to make up like 80 to 90% of the stacks of the field, and anything else is going to be crazy contrarian.
Makes sense. Yeah. Single entry, like I said, you make one minor pivot and you're already pretty damn different, and then you make a second one and you're just way off the field. So that makes sense for single entry. I like it.
All right, we have a question now, and all right, this is going to bring me to a contrarian stack I'm kind of interested in. Jets World asks us, is Manoah cash viable on DK tonight? No. And this is so weird to me. Did you follow the Manoah thing this morning?
Just loosely. I know that he was scheduled to start early, wasn't feeling too well, a little rumbly tummy, and came out and says he's good for game 2.
Yeah, it's weird to me. I don't get it. He's too sick to pitch a few hours ago, but he's good a few hours later. So something, either they decided to fudge the rotation and they're just reporting it this way, or he's actually sick and he's just going to give it a go. For cash game purposes, this is not something we want in cash games, though. A player who's potentially sick. On the other side of the game, though, the Rays are interesting to me. This is the second part of a doubleheader. The Blue Jays just went through a bullpen game in the early part of today, and I know they got some length out of Mitch White, but still, I'll pull up some of the bullpen from that game for the Blue Jays. They had to burn some pitchers in the pen, and they ended up getting. All right, so they got 6 innings out of Mitch White, but they went through Mayweather. Phelps pitched. Phelps is one of their better middle relievers. He's not going to be available today. But I am concerned about how healthy Alek Manoah is. He was apparently has a stomach bug or whatever it is. He was scratched from earlier. Could he be fine? Sure. But I tend to think there's a chance he's also just sick today. And if they did, they already played a bullpen game earlier. So I like stacking against him with the Rays just from the standpoint of Manoah could be compromised.
Yeah, and I feel like we saw this movie with somebody earlier in the season, and forgive me because I do not remember who it was, but somebody had something like that where they were feeling sick, took the mound, pitched like an inning and a half, and just came out of the game because he's not feeling well. Like, who likes doing anything when you've got a really upset stomach? So yeah, I object to your use of the word fudge in this conversation about a guy with a sick stomach, but yeah, I don't see any need, particularly in cash. You just don't want to take a risk like that. There's just no need.
Yeah, there's a lot of high-end pitchers, and I really like Alek Manoah. There's been individual spots where I like getting to him, and I know his ownership isn't all that high today, but if I'm paying up for a pitcher, give me all the other pay-up guys before I get to Alek Manoah, DeGrom, Cole, Kershaw, Darvish. Those guys are all higher priorities. I would also rather roster Joe Ryan for cheap than get to Alek Manoah and save some salary. But for cash games, this is the opposite of what we want. There's no security here. We don't know how healthy he is. It brings a whole lot of variance into the situation. So give me the other side of the game. And I mean, I know that the news came out that Alek Manoah is going to pitch for tonight. I do wonder, though, based on how the standings and how they're shaking out, I do think there's a chance that if the Blue Jays won game one this afternoon, Manoah wouldn't be pitching today. I think part of it is him taking one for the team and saying like, hey, I want to gut this out, pun intended this time, Terry, and see what he could do on the mound here because they lost that game and he's trying to jockey for positions in the standings, just being a competitor. But yeah, I have big concerns about Manoah, and I'm going to be stacking the Rays for that purpose. Is it a team that's making it into your lineups at all? Because it is one that's hard to put data to because it's just based on a narrative, but it's one that I think is legitimate.
So this game's not on the FanDuel slate. So lineups wise, no,
enough.
Not making it in. It would be a major advantage if they were. But yeah, I can see definitely throwing bats from both of these teams, honestly, particularly with everything that we're thinking about the Manoah side of this, the fact that we might get into a semi-depleted bullpen with some of these Rays bats. And there are some upside bats, some great premium contact bats in that lineup. So yeah, from maybe not top to bottom, but like a discerning kind of a top to bottom, like G-Man Choi is hitting 8th. I certainly want to get to him if I'm going to some Rays. So I think it is a lineup where I can spread some shares around and go to different combinations. And then the Blue Jays are just another one of those teams that I'm always looking to get to. It looks like they're not drawing very much ownership. Everybody in the low to mid single digits going up against Yonny Chirinos and a bullpen game. So definitely a spot where I can take shares of both sides on the offense and don't really think we need to worry about any of the pitchers.
Is there anything way off the board that you're getting to at offense? Because it does seem like most of the teams that are in good spots have reasonable ownership. There aren't that many teams here I'm looking at that really pop out with having, 1 or 2% ownership. I did mention before, I think the Padres at only 1% projected ownership when we got that question in Discord about them. Like that's a spot I don't mind getting to. But are there any 1% owned offenses that you see as being good dart throw plays in large field tournaments?
So one that does appear to be coming up a little bit more than I expected for me is the Milwaukee Brewers. I talked about Jordan Montgomery when we were going through pitchers, guy who's really been pitching dynamite since getting out in St. Louis, was always a good pitcher, better real life pitcher than a DFS pitcher, but he's capable of keeping a team down 2.53% home run rate, a 35.7% hard hit, only a 4.9% walk rate, 21.3% strikeout. So there's some contact there. But the Brewers do, like I said, when I was talking about Montgomery before, have several guys like a Hunter Renfroe, who just absolutely mash left-handed pitching for power. Mike Brasso at the top of the lineup. They're very cheap and nobody's going there. So that is a 1% team that I'm going to probably be ahead of the field on as kind of a surprise, but not, as I'm talking it through, not like overly surprising, just wasn't expecting it kind of a surprise, which I guess is the definition of a surprise.
Yeah, so that if you were expecting it, it wouldn't be very much of a surprise. It's a surprise birthday party, but you got the invite ahead of time. So I mentioned before that I think that there's some reason to like the Rays going up against Alek Manoah in his situation. One other one, though, is the St. Louis Cardinals for me with Luis Perdomo expected to pitch the middle innings. Because, well, a couple things. First of all, in our top stacks tool, which is free to use today, guys, if you guys want to check out some of the tools we have over at stokastic.com, stuff that I use, that Terry uses to help build baseball lineups and things like the top stacks, well, invaluable to me, where I can see where's the leverage, which stacks are not picking up much ownership and have good top stack odds for us. Well, St. Louis, we with 4% top stack odds and less than 1% ownership. And with Perdomo expected to pitch the middle innings, he's not going to pitch 4 or 5 innings or anything like that, but we've seen him pitch 2 to 3 at times this year, which is kind of where I think he's probably going to be at today. He is not generating swing and misses at all out of the bullpen this year. So Perdomo has a 9.5% strikeout rate. And I know that it's a limited sample size, but still That's concerning to me when he's only being able to produce that kind of a strikeout rate coming out of the bullpen. His swing strike rate also only 8%. So Perdomo, who didn't pitch at all last year, he was injured. He's coming back. The numbers haven't been very good. I think that he's somebody who could be had. And then something else to consider too. We typically don't love bullpen games because relief pitchers are typically better than starting pitchers because it's just easier to be effective in one inning than it is in multiple innings. But if Perdomo struggles today and gives up a bunch of runs, I don't think the Brewers are going to want to really extend their bullpen past then. And then I think they just start to say, like, hey, no Devin Williams today, none of our top end relievers. We're going to go to some of our just inning eaters guys. And at less than 1% ownership for the Cardinals, I really do think that if they get to Luis Perdomo, they're probably going to be facing some crappier relievers the rest of the game. So that's a really, really low on stack that I'm going to be getting to.
Yeah, Cards were on the list that I threw out there as I was rambling on and on earlier when you first asked me about offense. They are number 2 in my power index today. A lot of home run upside. I mentioned Tyler O'Neill in answer to somebody's question about a favored outfielder. O'Neill is hitting 9th today, which is really weird and interesting. He's 5,400 on DK. That's a difficult price to pay for a 9-hitter at home, but nobody's going there. And he's still got a massive amount of power in that bat. He's up to 14 home runs over 372 plate appearances, just a 166 ISO, oddly, but still making 43.3% hard hit, 11.6% barrel rate. That's a home run hitter lurking at the bottom of the lineup with nobody going to him. We get Albert Pujols in the middle of the lineup instead of, I forget what the kid's name was, who was at minimum price, who I was looking at earlier, Burleson, something like that. So instead of Burleson, we get Pujols, which I'm happy to make that pivot. Nobody's going to be going to him. You get the weird combinations with him and Goldschmidt, particularly on DK, where you can't play them both. So some natural pivots built into that lineup. Tons of power, tons of upside around the Goldschmidts, the Arenados of the world. So like a lot. It's a team I've been doing pretty well with all season long, and I'm happy to go back there.
Albert Pujols, I won't even say ageless because he's listed at 42. Could be older than that. He's been washed up for a considerable amount of time. He's back though. And at this point, I just kind of buy. He's a 141 WRC plus for the season. I just buy into it. Pujols is a good hitter right now. Considerably better against
St. Louis.
Considerably better against lefties than he is against righties. Yeah, he knows all the best pharmacists in St. Louis. But I mean, against lefties, he's definitely been better than he is against righties. But the power is ridiculous right now. I mean, there are pitchers that are nowhere near the strike zone that he is just destroying and sending into orbit. One thing on Pujols, because we got a few minutes here and we've kind of talked through most of the talking points, I think. But how many home runs does Pujols finish with for his career? Because he's got.
I think he gets the 7. 20? I think he gets over 7 this year, and then he's saying he calls it quits even if he finishes at 699, which I don't know if I could do that. I don't know if I could see him doing that, but he's saying he's calling it quits. I like him to get over 7. Let's say 701.
All right, so 21 games left for the Cardinals. He's at 697. So he would need 3 homers in 21 games. At his pace that he's hitting homers at, particularly in the second half of the season, more than reasonable.
And I guess they're going to feed him plate appearances down the stretch if he's anywhere close.
You know, the one thing that helps him a lot is that the Cardinals have an 8-game lead over the Brewers, because I do think if this was like a 2 or a 3-game lead or something like that, he'd probably remain in this platoon role where he'd only be facing left-handed pitching predominantly. But the fact that they've built up such a big cushion plays in his favor, because now they'll be like, hey, let's try to do some stat padding here. Mm-hmm. Could it cost us a win maybe down the stretch against right-hand pitching? Sure, but it doesn't matter. And then in terms of the standing, so I think that's something that's going to benefit him. I'm on the same page. I think he gets to 700.
And I mean, just a guy I want to see do it too. It's been a pleasure to watch that dude play baseball his entire career. He's been outrageously good back when he was probably the best hitter I'd seen at that point years and years ago. And then, transitioning through his later years and everything and watching this run that he's been on, it's just one of those guys who seems like he's done it right throughout his entire career. Can't say enough about Pujols.
Yeah. I mean, Bonds is still the best hitter of our lifetime though.
Yeah. That's fair. Barry Bonds was a absolute superstar, first ballot Hall of Famer, and then he became a god once he started doing PEDs or whatever brand of PEDs he switched to at the end, whatever the case was. He went from elite Hall of Famer to just absolute, cheat code god status. So yeah, that is fair. I'll unwind the Pujols being the best I've seen, but best natural unenhanced maybe.
The numbers, just because I pulled them up right now for Bonds. By the way, before we get too deep into the weeds here, only a few minutes left. Any further talking points for you on this slate? Is there anything we haven't talked about that you want to touch on?
No, I mean, I'm pulling a lot of lineups and trying to get a little bit of differentiation here. There's a massive amount of Jacob DeGrom, like we talked about in my lineups. Yanks, Dodgers, Baltimore, some Brewers still working their way in, some Braves, Twins, KC, St. Louis. It's basically straight line with what we talked about. So there's not that much to call out as oddballs at the end here.
By the way, Ryan asked us, Rinpack in chat, it asked who are the top 5 hitters of our lifetime. Well, Terry's older than me, so Terry's going to be throwing out like Honus Wagner and Babe Ruth and stuff like that. But let me think if I could really think of this off the top of my head. Barry Bonds is clearly number 1. And I mean, peak Barry Bonds, if we're going to talk about just him when they couldn't make baseball caps big enough to fit his giant juiced up head in. I mean, at age 37, he had a 244 WRC plus. Just like that's 244 WRC plus is nonsensical. And also keep in mind, he played in a really pitcher friendly ballpark. Imagine if he played at Yankee Stadium, he'd have hit like, how many home runs do you think he would have hit? I wonder if anybody's done this research. The 73 home run season and some of those other years, how many home runs would he have hit if he played in Yankee Stadium as opposed to San Francisco?
Yeah, or just like park adjust the entire career and see if he would have gotten over 1,000. It's a good point. I mean, he would have probably been close to that, just given that he put up bonkers numbers in what we already have. But yeah, and considering the fact that after that ridiculous 144% better than average creating runs his last year of his career or whatever it was, the guy was run out of the sport. It's not like he was done. Like he was still putting up numbers that last year. It was just, when he was on the field, he was outrageous. He was so good. To answer the question, though, it also depends on, what we're considering a good hitter. Like, is Tony Gwynn, Wade Boggs? Are we talking about guys like bat on ball contact kind of guys? Are we talking about more of the premium power hitters? Are we doing like an overall, an overall mishmash? Like, I think Juan Soto is probably going to end up on that list when he's all said and done, just given the absurd walk rate, the absurdly low strikeout rate, all the power, the bat on ball skills. I don't think it was an unfair comparison when I said Ted Williams earlier. I really think that kid is that good, but he's got to do it. He's got a lot of years, 20 some odd years of going out there and doing it. He's got to get done. Pujols is probably on that list for me. A-Rod could probably be on that list, but how many of those years were enhanced? So that's a little bit difficult to say. Who else?
Trout's on the list for me.
Mike Trout.
So
that's an easy one, and presumably natural and done the right
Trout this year also. Trout has missed a third of the season with injury. He's second in the American League in home runs. He's been so ridiculous this year.
Half
so
of them in the last week.
For me, I'm going to say Bonds and Trout. Aaron Judge is getting up there if he's able to keep up what he's been doing. I mean, Judge is a WRC plus north of 200 this year. Still probably needs a little bit more of a sample size for me to get there.
More track record for him, but he's approached that list. And that's a thing that's been underrated about Judge for a lot of his career, is just his ability to read the strike zone, his ability to put bat on ball. Like, he is a very good hitter in addition to being that ridiculously good premium power hitter. So he doesn't get enough credit for that. He's also dealing with by far the worst rating for umpires calling called strikes outside the zone just because of his sheer size. So he's got a lot going against him to put up those killer numbers. So yeah, it's fair to put him in that mix at least.
So a couple of people in chat have given out people who would be on my list. I have my 5, and this is going to be final for me. My 5 top 5 hitters in my lifetime: Barry Bonds, Mike Trout, Ichiro, Manny Ramirez, and A-Rod. Those are going to be my 5.
Okay. I like that. That's fair.
It's hard to look at. I just pulled up some of the. It's hard to look at some of the aggregate numbers for somebody like Ichiro or Pujols because there was so much of a drop off at the tail end of their career. So if you're looking at the aggregate numbers and like WRC plus, it's gonna definitely get taken down because like Ichiro played until he was 45 years old and he had a negative 36 WRC plus in his final year, 32 WRC plus. Maybe I'd actually back off Ichiro a little bit looking at his WRC plus numbers because
if I need a single out of somebody, man, is who my go-to.
I mean, I'm thinking of it, like you said, also, it's pretty subjective in terms of, like, you brought up Tony Gwynn before. But to me, I mean, if it's going to be most value created by a hitter, Ichiro probably wouldn't be on the list. But the fact that he was able to maintain a peak where he had like an 8% strikeout rate, pretty ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah, and I just jumped over to Fangraphs since we do have a little time, and I got the lineups in. So from my birth year of 1979, that was a long time ago, up through 2022, just looking, this is sorted by WAR. Bonds and A-Rod are the top 2, and then a guy I didn't think of, but just super interesting for this discussion because of who he is and what he did, Ricky Henderson. sitting third in WAR with a 106.3 on that list. 279, 401, 419 for his career, 297 home runs, 1,406 stolen bases. Dude got on base at a 401 clip for his career. Bonds got on base at a 444 clip for his career. That's just ridiculous. Barry Bonds' career, 298, 444, 607, 173 WRC plus.
Babe Ruth splits for his career. 342, 474 on base percentage, 690 slugging. So that's also just some crazy numbers. But all right, guys, that is going to do it for us today. Thank you very much for watching. If you haven't done it already, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Don't forget, if you haven't signed up for our football package yet, use the promo code SCRAMBLE. You're going to get 7 days of our football package for just $7. When you sign up using that promo code SCRAMBLE, you can be cool like Terry McBride to win $200,000 on NFL Showdown contest. Just sign up using that promo code SCRAMBLE so you make sure you get the best deal possible. Guys, thank you very much for watching. Good luck tonight.